Chapter 1086. This was bound to be a sleepless night. Every time the passive effect of Single's curse was triggered, Wang Ling was always worried that a new bug would pop up. On the other side, Lotus Sun, who was lying on her 50-meter-long bed, was also lost in deep thought. She regretted her confession today. She had clearly mustered up the courage to say it, but when the words left her mouth, they turned into something else. AI. It was a good thing there was no one around, otherwise it would have been too embarrassing. Lotus Sun buried her head in the pillow and slapped the bed with her slender legs. It was November 5th, the second day of school at number 60 High. The news that several Senior 3 students had disrupted the one-on-one tutoring group and pierced a hole in the classroom ceiling had spread through the class. Although the ceiling had already been repaired overnight, many people still praised this incident from the bottom of their hearts. Well done, Wang Ling. As it turned out, tutoring with Lotus Sun was still too much of a nuisance. But Old Pan's plan clearly wouldn't stop here. He wondered if he should raise his scores a little in the next mock exam, so that his scores wouldn't be lower than the average, and he could get an above-average score. This way, the one-on-one tutoring group plan would continue, and Wang Ling would be able to get rid of the distress of having to stay at school for tutoring earlier, and give this glorious and great learning opportunity to the next unlucky person. In the morning, it was Old Antique's theory of history class. After a summer break, the students still missed him a little. When the familiar figure stepped into the classroom, everyone's eyes began to stare fixedly at Old Antique. Why do I feel like Old Antique has lost some weight? The students in the classroom silently observed Old Antique's rotund figure. After the summer break, they were surprised to find that Old Antique seemed to have lost a lot of weight. I heard that Old Antique went to volunteer teaching during the summer break. Someone in the know finally said. Volunteer teaching? I heard it's a very poor place. Every year, our city organizes teachers to volunteer there. This year, it's our number 60 High and several other high schools in Peiyuan District who send teachers there. Old Antique is one of them, and he's been teaching there for half a month. This student said. In addition to the teaching mission, the school has also raised money to buy teaching supplies, such as textbooks and teaching spirit swords. These things can't be found in rural areas. When this student said this, everyone couldn't help sighing in their hearts. Huaxiao Nation could already be considered a prosperous and powerful nation since its founding, but some poor areas were inherently disadvantaged due to their geographical location, which directly led to unbalanced regional development. Although the motherland was prosperous, they had to admit that there was still a gap between the rich and the poor. Students. Old Antique stood on the dais. After returning from his teaching experience this time, his heart was filled with emotion. Half a month of volunteer teaching was very short, but it was enough for Old Antique to have a deep understanding of the poverty and hardships of a foreign village. I'm sure everyone already knows that half a month ago, my teacher went to Shihai Village in Shihai County for a half-month volunteer teaching mission. The Alliance of 10,000 Schools initiated this volunteer teaching activity many years ago, and it's not just for winter and summer vacations. Every day, in every prosperous big city, schools would organize teachers to take turns teaching activities. The mobile volunteer teaching activity has greatly improved the teaching of cultivation in the poor areas of our country. At the same time, it has also provided great help to the children in those poor areas. It must be very hard, teacher, right? I'd be lying if I said it wasn't hard. Old Antique smiled bitterly. The terrain in those places is harsh, so the teachers who carry out the volunteer teaching activities have to be at least at the golden core stage on average, otherwise it'll be very dangerous. Because of the strong acid in the underground spirit vein, the residents in these areas have no choice but to endure such a harsh environment. Can't they move to a big city? Super Chen asked. They've lived here for generations, and their physiques have changed because of the environment, so those places aren't suitable for outsiders to live in. Furthermore, they can't move elsewhere. That's because it's very easy for them to not acclimatize to the environment. If they carry out volunteer teaching activities in such a dangerous place for a long time, it will have a huge impact on the teachers' bodies, which is why the volunteer teaching activities were carried out. Old Antique said, The special geographical environment makes it impossible for the local residents to smoothly develop in other places, and for people from outside the city to settle in and trade with them. In the long run, the area's economy will fall behind. And there are many other places with such a harsh environment like West Sea Village. But because the underground spirit vein can't be completely changed, our country can only intervene in other ways to stimulate the economic development of poor areas. For example, we can fire spirit power missiles into the sky that can suppress the strong acid in order to maintain a stable climate for a period of time. Another example is to take advantage of the special attribute of the underground spirit vein and use its corrosive power as an energy source. In the West Sea Village that teacher went to this time, the villagers are very good at decomposing garbage. They all have a trash can at home that goes straight to the ground, and when all their daily waste is thrown into it, it will immediately be decomposed by the strong acid in the spirit vein. In some sense, this is also a way to protect the environment. Teacher, it's been hard on you, you've lost weight. At that moment, someone finally brought up the main point. Actually, the main reason I've lost weight isn't because of the volunteer teaching activities. It's because there's no snack bar in that place. I finished all the spicy strips I brought on the first day. It wasn't enough at all. Old Antique cried like a storm. Everyone. In the theory of history class this time, Old Antique used volunteer teaching as the topic to bring up a very key test point. Underground spirit veins. Underground spirit veins were special energy bodies hidden deep underground. They weren't tangible, but were entrenched in one place like roaming dragons. When cultivators went into seclusion, they would often choose the most suitable geomantic location for their seclusion, and many cultivators would also rely on calculating the location of underground spirit veins to choose the specific location for their seclusion. There were big and small spirit veins, and they all had different attributes. The energy contained in the underground spirit veins under a big city was undoubtedly enormous. This was especially true for the spirit vein under the capital, Jinghua City. After class, Old Antique gave everyone a handout which listed the locations in which various underground spirit veins had appeared in historical periods. These were all mandatory test points for the next monthly test. During the test, 10 spirit veins would be randomly selected from over 100 pieces of information. Everyone had to answer the historical period in which the spirit vein had appeared as well as its attribute to be considered a success. After helping Old Antique hand out the handout in form, Lotus Sun couldn't help looking in Wang Ling's direction. Yesterday's confession had actually been a little awkward. She didn't know what Wang Ling was thinking, and had planned to sneak a peek at him. She hadn't expected that as soon as she looked over, she would actually find that Wang Ling was also looking at her. Chapter 1087. Sensing Lotus Sun's gaze on him, Wang Ling quickly averted his eyes and pretended to look out the window casually. In any case, he had indeed been careless just now, and hadn't been completely on guard against Lotus Sun's gaze. Wang Ling had indeed been secretly observing Lotus Sunday. Of course, he wasn't looking at her face, but observing her reaction. Once Single's curse was triggered, it would last for a full 3 days before disappearing. That was to say, if there was a bug in the spell, it would manifest itself during these 3 days. Hence, Wang Ling was both curious and worried about the bug that could appear on Lotus Sun at any time. Wang Ling spent the entire morning feeling apprehensive. Fortunately, nothing had happened for now, and there was no reaction from Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling heaved a sigh of relief. Maybe it was because the bug in Single's curse had been completely fixed. After all, it had already been modified almost 20 times, and Wang Ling felt that there shouldn't be any more mistakes. He was probably just too nervous. After the list of spirit veins was distributed in the theory of history class in the morning, Teacher Pan unexpectedly brought up the matter of spirit veins in Old Pan's Tao Talismans class in the afternoon. Everyone instantly tensed up. It was obvious that knowledge about spirit veins would probably be the focus of the assessment for the next month. Since the beginning of the Spirit Qi era, more and more underground spirit veins had been discovered by cultivators in various countries. They could be divided into 5 levels, and the 5th and highest level was called a heavenly vein. Currently, there were more than 1,000 heavenly veins in every corner of the world, and some were even hidden in the deep sea. Huaxiao Nation had 20% of the total number of heavenly veins, and almost all the developed cities were built on them. Heavenly veins themselves were an important source of energy for cities. High-level underground spirit veins could be regenerated, which meant that in theory, they had an inexhaustible source of energy. However, this had to be based on a balance between supply and consumption. In the current era of national cultivation, cultivators were using more and more energy from spirit veins every year. In the long run, no matter how many spirit veins there were, they wouldn't be able to bear the burden. Seeking a path of sustainable development on the premise of protecting the ecological environment is an unchanging topic for human cultivators. Teacher Pan rested both hands on the lectern, her gaze extremely serious. A lot of people hadn't expected Teacher Pan's lecture today to be so profound. This topic didn't have much to do with the Tao Talismans class, but as a teacher in charge, she also had to take into account the moral education of the students. Thus, Teacher Pan wouldn't be stingy in using some of her class time to guide the students to establish correct values. Anyway, there were still a lot of physical education classes this semester. But as for why he had brought up the topic of underground spirit veins today, it wasn't just because Old Antique had started it in the morning, but also because a criminal gang which specialized in robbing underground spirit veins had recently sprung up across the country. This gang had a strict organizational structure and a clear division of labor. It should be the most dangerous criminal gang since the Immortal Mansion was breached. Stealing spirit veins is just a crime. Once you're caught, you won't even have the right to go to jail. You'll be sentenced to death. Teacher Pan said solemnly to everyone in the class, if the spirit veins are robbed clean and the energy is cut off, not only will it have a huge impact on the regional economy, it will also have a huge impact on the living environment of cultivators. And the most important thing is that the barriers set up in every city are based on spirit veins. Once the underground spirit veins are robbed, the stability of the barriers will be affected, and the city will be at great risk. Teacher, have we locked onto the leader of this organization? Based on the joint investigation conducted by police stations all over the country, the leader of this organization is the new #1 figure in the dark network. But at the moment, we don't know much about this person, and we can't accurately determine his identity or ability. We can only roughly estimate his figure. Currently, the police have given this suspect in the spirit vein robbery a code name, #1. I believe it won't be long before he's caught. Robbing spirit veins. It wasn't that Wang Ling hadn't expected such a lunatic to appear. But underground spirit veins weren't easy to find. They were hidden very deep, almost close to the Earth's core, and ordinary people couldn't come into contact with them at all. At the moment, high-precision magic treasures were used to mine the energy of spirit veins deep underground. These high-precision magic treasures had independent energy bases, and were heavily guarded. This was because the work of extracting energy from underground spirit veins was extremely dangerous. Once the energy base exploded, the entire city would be affected. But based on the energy base's defensive measures, it was basically impossible for this to happen. This group of people were actually able to extract underground spirit veins with their bare hands. They definitely had their own special method. After hearing the news from Teacher Pan in class, Wang Ling quietly pondered this in his heart. Things hadn't been peaceful recently. He had just helped Wang Nuan settle the matter, and now this group of strange people had come out to mine spirit veins. Elsewhere, Ajua hadn't made any progress with Bai Youquan's interrogation. It was said that Bai Youquan's attitude was very unyielding, and he refused to say a word. His memory had been shattered by Fate Dao, and even when the police forcibly probed his memories, they couldn't extract any useful information. On the contrary, because of Bai Youquan's arrest, the Black Shadow Army seemed to have quietened down recently, and wasn't making any big moves. But this was what worried Wang Ling and Ajua the most. They had already experienced too much of the calm before the storm. Biding their time wasn't a sign of peace. It was very likely that an even bigger conspiracy was brewing behind the scenes. Near the end of school that day, Wang Ling slipped into the toilet and prepared to use a teleportation spell to escape early. He didn't know what other strange things would happen if he continued to stay at school with Lotus Sunday. But just as Wang Ling was about to slip away, he heard a boy's voice in the corridor. "Classmate Lotus-san." Wang Ling looked in the direction of the voice. Using the king's eye, he saw a boy from the next class standing in front of Lotus-san with a flushed face, as if he had mustered up all his courage. A confession? Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. This wasn't the first time Wang Ling had seen this scene. Since the start of the first semester, Lotus-san had received a number of confessions from boys one after another. Wang Ling couldn't catch up to the spirit of bracing himself, even when he knew he would be rejected. And Lotus-san herself seemed to enjoy the process of being confessed to. Just as she was about to give him the good guy card, the boy who had been about to confess suddenly yelled at her. "Classmate Lotus-san, I hate you. I hate you the most. I beg you, don't show up in front of me again." Everyone. Chapter 1088. Wang Ling never thought that the situation he had been most worried about would still happen. And it had happened so unexpectedly. It was just that the bug in Single's curse this time wasn't as complicated as before. Looking at the current situation, it probably only spread to the next confessor, and wasn't spreading on a large scale like the last time. This time, it was a one-way transmission. That was to say, starting from Lotus-san, if student A confessed to Lotus-san, the curse would spread to student A. Then, if student B wanted to confess to student A, the curse would spread to student B. Thus, after realizing the problem with the curse this time, Wang Ling's first reaction was to look at the appearance of the boy who had confessed to Lotus-Sunday. This boy was actually pretty good-looking. He looked refined and had clean and fair skin. He was probably the type that little girls liked. That was to say, it wasn't impossible for this brother to be confessed to. Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart. As expected, confessions were a game played by people who lived in the Attractiveness Association all year round. If this singles curse had been applied to an ordinary-looking person, then the curse probably wouldn't be able to continue spreading. This type of bug was actually very simple. It wouldn't cause too much harm. As long as no one confessed to this brother in the next 3 days, it wouldn't continue to spread. But Wang Ling still paid attention, and planned to secretly observe this brother of his. And so, the next day, on November 6th, this brother who had shouted his disdain at Lotus-san in public became a hot topic. His name was worshipped as a warrior, and it started to spread among all the classes. God, this Xiaoming really has guts. Yesterday, he actually said he hated Lotus-san in front of her. I'm afraid he doesn't want to stay in number 60 high anymore. Really? When did that happen? Why didn't I know about it? You slipped away too fast after school yesterday, so you missed the show. Lotus-san was stupefied at the time. And I heard that she was so angry that her face turned red. Listening to the discussion in class, Wang Ling learned that brother's name. Xiaoming. Of course, Wang Ling didn't think that Lotus-san was a particularly petty person who would do anything to Xiaoming because of his rudeness yesterday. But if Xiaoming really suffered revenge, Wang Ling would still take action. After all, he was the cause of this incident, and it was his responsibility to deal with the aftermath. That would depend on how things would develop next. As number 60 high's little gossip expert, Dopey Guo arrived at school early in the morning, and waited for Lotus-san to come to class, so that he could personally ask her about the situation. Lotus-san was the second person involved in Xiaoming's incident yesterday, and everyone in class was most concerned about her attitude towards it. Unfortunately, it seemed that Lotus-san had asked for leave today. Student Lotus-san, who had always been punctual, hadn't arrived at school on time. It's over. Looks like he's quite angry. Collecting homework, Little Peanut sighed deeply. Offending classmate Lotus-san. I'm afraid her bodyguards are going to throw her into the river. Dopey Guo was also confused about this matter. Who can tell me what Lotus-san's reaction was like yesterday? I left early yesterday and didn't see it. I heard people from other classes say that she's about to explode from anger. When has student Lotus-san ever been humiliated like this in public? She must be furious. I heard that her face was all red yesterday, and she left without saying a word. Then what about that Xiaoming? Xiaoming? After he said that yesterday, he fainted on the spot. Fainted? Everyone was horrified. What kind of ridiculous move was this? After saying such earth-shattering words on the spot, he even scared himself into fainting. This bro is also a genius. In short, whether it's student Lotus Sun or student Xiaoming, they haven't said anything since yesterday's incident. Instead, student Xiaoming won a large number of supporters. Currently, our school's Protect Rome Club and Xiaoming's Warrior Club are evenly matched, and neither side can do anything to the other. Little Peanut explained the current situation. Protect Rome Club and Warrior Club. These were the two student organizations that Lotus Sun had set up after entering number 60 high. The meaning of Protect Rome Club was very clear. It was a group of boys who specialized in protecting Lotus Sun, but didn't have the guts to confess their love to her. These boys were willing to be her flower protectors and become her fans. The Warrior Club, on the other hand, was a group of warriors who had already confessed their love to Lotus Sun. Unfortunately, they had all been rejected by her. Thus, the biggest goal of the Warrior Club was to wreak havoc. Any other boy who had anything to do with Lotus Sun would suffer retaliation from the Warrior Club. For example, when Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had tutored one-on-one the last time, those senior boys had been members of the Warrior Club. Their attitude was very clear. If they couldn't get someone, no one else could either. At the same time, their attitudes toward Lotus Sun were ambiguous. From liking her at the very beginning to loathing her after being rejected, the emotional entanglement between liking and loathing was extremely complicated. But it just so happened that Xiaoming from the next class had performed such an earth-shattering feat yesterday, which instantly roused the Warrior Union's members. If this story continued to develop, Wang Ling felt that this Xiaoming might soon become the president of the Warrior Club. Xiaoming and Fangxing were in the same class as each other in class 2, so Fangxing was very clear about Xiaoming's usual situation. Xiaoming had spent a whole semester accumulating strength, and had finally plucked up the courage to confess his love to Lotus Sun at the start of the second semester. However, he had never thought that what he would say would actually be the complete opposite of what he was thinking. This undoubtedly made Xiaoming feel like he had been bewitched. Thus, he didn't dare say anything at all, and even thought about transferring schools. Fangxing took in the situation. The truth was that Fangxing had already guessed the whole story from beginning to end. He had come to Class 3's door many times to secretly observe Wang Ling's reaction through the window, only to find that he was as calm as ever. What would the final outcome of this matter be? Fangxing was curious. He knew that Xiaoming's condition was due to some kind of curse, but the problem was that Wang Ling had made up this curse himself. And without knowing the principle behind it, no one could break it. As for a way to break it, it wasn't like there was no way. As long as Wang Ling confessed to Xiaoming and the curse rebounded on Fangxing, this matter would be over. But just thinking about it, it was impossible for that to happen. The word confession didn't exist for Wang Ling. What was more, Xiaoming was a boy. Chapter 1089. Although Xiaoming was revered as a warrior, his heart was in deep torment at that moment. He had been building up his strength for half a semester before he had finally spoken out loud with great difficulty, but in the end he had dropped the ball at the critical moment. He didn't know why his words had turned into such nonsense when they left his mouth. Now Xiaoming was caught in a dilemma. He didn't want to become a warrior of the Warrior Club, and he still deeply liked Lotus Sunday. But the school's Warrior Club now revered him as a hero. If his feelings were exposed, this bunch of people would probably take revenge on him. So in class today, Xiaoming was absent-minded all day. He experienced what only classmate Lotus Sun could experience, what it felt like to be the focus of the school. If number 60 high had a hot search list now, Xiaoming would definitely be on the front page of the day, with the word explosive next to it. But Xiaoming didn't know when the hot search list would disappear. When he passed by class 3 during break, Xiaoming looked at Lotus Sun's empty seat. He had heard early on that Lotus Sun had been so angry at him yesterday that she had fallen ill and hadn't come to school. Xiaoming hadn't thought it was that exaggerated, but when he passed by, he realized that it was actually true. Of course, Xiaoming's purpose in coming to class 3 wasn't just to look for Lotus Sun. When the focus of the incident during break suddenly appeared in class, there was an immediate uproar around him. Isn't that Xiaoming? The male lead in yesterday's news. A few people in the class began to shout and wrangle. I'm really sorry about what happened yesterday. Xiaoming walked up to the dais and bowed to everyone in class. He knew Lotus Sun's status in Class 3, and that almost everyone liked her. He had acted out of his mind yesterday, so he would definitely be hated by the people in Class 3. In order not to make more enemies for himself, Xiaoming had been conflicted for a long time before finally plucking up the courage to apologize again. This apology was immediately met with applause from Class 3. Xiaoming raised his head with a puzzled expression on his face. Superchen stepped forward and directly put his arm around Xiaoming's neck. Bro. To be honest, I was dumbfounded by what you did yesterday. Who taught you how to pick up girls? Pick up girls? Xiaoming. Student Lotus Sun has never had such a big reaction before. Superchen laughed. Don't worry, I've already asked around. She's not angry. If she was really angry, you would have been killed by classmate Sun's bodyguards on your way to school this morning. Wang Ling. Superchen wasn't lying at all. If Lotus Sun really was angry, she wouldn't have needed to say anything at all. Given Huagua Water Curtain Group's status, it was a piece of cake for them to arrange for a student's transfer. Coupled with Superchen's open mouth, the fact that Lotus Sun wasn't angry was even more concrete evidence. At least in Wang Ling's opinion, it was true. How do you know so much? Dopigua didn't dare believe it. Everyone in class also looked at Superchen curiously. It's like this. Lotus Sun has a childhood friend who's always been training in my family's body techniques dojo. I have her WeChat, so I was gossiping about classmate Sun just now. I didn't expect her to tell me everything, Superchen said. Then what did this childhood friend say? She said that after Lotus Sun went back yesterday, those bodyguards saw that student Sun had been silent the whole time. So they asked her to go over and talk to her. After talking to her for about 2 hours, this childhood friend realized that Lotus Sun didn't seem to be really angry. Superchen rubbed his chin and said, but she didn't tell me the specifics. In any case, one thing is for sure. Student Lotus Sun seems to have taken a liking to Xiaoming. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that she likes him. Maybe she just has a good impression of him. Wang Ling. Xiaoming. Everyone. As soon as Superchen said that, there was a burst of F***K in class. In a flash, everyone seemed to understand what on earth Xiaoming's operation yesterday was all about. It turned out that he hadn't really hated her at all. It had been a reverse confession in front of everyone. It turned out that he had used a reverse confession to attract student Lotus Sun's attention, and was trying to express his feelings in this ingenious way. Everyone was stupefied. It wasn't just Class 3. When the students in the corridor who had been watching Xiaoming, the male lead of the news, heard this news, their mouths dropped open, and their eyes were filled with disbelief and horror. GG, what kind of godly operation is this? Everyone was completely horrified. The entire incident had taken a turn for the worse, and number 60 High was once again in an uproar. It was very difficult for this kind of plot to happen in real life under normal circumstances. Perhaps only an idiotic author who wrote songs every day without updating them, and who confidently stopped updating, and went around being naughty would be able to write something like this. So this time, the whole school knew that Lotus Sun actually liked Xiaoming. Xiaoming had thought that the Warrior Union would retaliate against him after the turn for the worse. But after learning the truth, the brothers in the Warrior Union all looked at him with adoration in their eyes. In an instant, Xiaoming became number 60 High's love guru. During the afternoon break, there was a continuous stream of people coming to him to ask him questions about confessions. Master Xiaoming, please teach me how to pick up girls. We won't be able to learn this trick of yours. A boy from another class came up to Xiaoming and looked at him with adoration in his eyes. I've been pursuing a girl from another school recently. She can't be considered pretty, but she's the tsundere type. Master Xiaoming, please teach me the right way to confess. How should I confess so that I won't be rejected? You have to be brave. Xiaoming didn't know how to answer. After all, even he himself had been lucky. Who knew that his reverse confession would make Lotus Sun develop a good impression of him instead? A second boy came up to Xiaoming. Master Xia, I have a big sister next door that I've liked for a long time, and she's very gentle. Also, she likes anime and cosplay very much. How can I win her favor? You have to be brave, Xiaoming said. A third boy came up to Xiaoming. Mr. Xiaoming, I actually have a younger sister. Of course, my parents adopted her when I was little. We're not actually related by blood. May I ask if I should be brave as well? You have to be brave and learn about our country's criminal laws, Xiaoming said. Chapter 1090. At lunchtime, it was Wang Ling's first time experiencing the canteen's unimpeded flow. Since most of the boys had taken advantage of the lunchtime break to ask Xiaoming questions about love, there were fewer students in the canteen. With fewer people eating, the hands of the auntie in charge of the cafeteria were no longer trembling. She wished that the students who came to eat more. Otherwise, the leftovers would be collected into buckets of swill and sent to the dragon pig farmers. The scariest thing was that once these dragon pigs were fattened, they would be sold to the physiognomy market and be processed into highly toxic pork chops by Jiayin. This was a true waste. We're all growing up. How can we not eat? After asking a student why there were so few people, Mother One took off her apron in front of everyone, intending to go to Xiaoming's place and pull people over for dinner. 5 or 6 minutes later, a classmate who had come over to eat lunch after failing to get a consultation said that Mother One had also fallen. Everyone was horrified. So Mother One isn't married yet? An insider replied. Yes, but the old men who were with Mother One didn't live long. Because of dark cuisine? I heard that's not the case. It's just that his body isn't good and his lifespan isn't long. Oh. Everyone was speechless. Mother One had the appearance of cursing her husband. Wang Ling picked up his plate, and the old auntie who had been serving his food scooped out a large pile of meat for him. Today's lunch was scrambled eggs with tomatoes, braised meatballs, braised pork, and stir-fried assorted vegetables. The soup was winter melon and pork rib soup. Every time he saw braised meatballs in brown sauce or braised pork, he always had a habit of asking the auntie to pour a spoonful of gravy over the rice, so that it tasted more delicious. Wang Ling, you eat so much every time. Why don't you put on weight? Superchen was extremely envious. As a muscle-building fan, Superchen also liked to eat meat, but he had to control his food intake at every meal. It hadn't been easy to build up a figure, and if you weren't careful, you'd get fat again. Boys like Superchen, who were especially concerned about muscles, often had to pay attention to their body fat percentage. Superchen's body fat percentage was currently at 11%, which wasn't bad. Wang Ling picked up a meatball and sent it straight into his mouth. There was actually no such thing as not getting fat from eating too much, but Wang Ling could rub the fat off. If he got fat, he would just rub it a little, and the fat that had been rubbed off wasn't completely useless. This was the meat he had rubbed off of his body, and he had stored all this extra meat in the space of the king's eye. He thought that if he was injured one day, this fat could be used to fill up his wound. But regrettably so far, no living creature in this universe had been able to hurt Wang Ling. Looking at the amount of fat Wang Ling had stored in the king's eye space over the years, he estimated that it should be more than 200 kilograms, which was about the weight of a pig. As they ate, Wang Ling saw Lu Qingyi and Wang Jin sitting at a table not far away, and the scene looked very harmonious. He heard that the two of them quarreled every other day at Wei Ji's place, and it was only because Wang Ling was at school that they calmed down a little. On the other side, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan also got their food and sat at the table next to Wang Ling. They actually wanted to sit at the same table as Wang Ling, but this was a matter of first come, first served. Wang Ling could only blame himself for being more popular than he had imagined. When he sat down, Superchen, Dopigua, Little Peanut and Fang Xing would basically sit with him. It was 3 of these 4 people who were having lunch with Wang Ling today. Apparently, Little Peanut had also gone to consult Xiaoming about love. Halfway through the meal, Hirogua suddenly became nosy. Wang Ling, is this really okay? Wang Ling. Hirogua. If Lotus Sun really falls in love with Xiaoming because of this, won't you suffer a huge loss? At best, it's at the stage where she has a good impression of him. If you fight for it again, who knows, you might be able to win her heart back. Oh. Wang Ling chewed the braised pork in his mouth and was silent. If Xiaoming and Lotus Sun ended up together, his own attitude naturally wouldn't matter. That way, Lotus Sun's attention on him would be completely transferred to Xiaoming. For Wang Ling, Lotus Sun was actually an outstanding and good girl, but it was precisely because she was so outstanding and eye-catching that Wang Ling often felt uncomfortable. Feelings couldn't be forced. It was everyone's freedom to like who they liked. Of course, everyone also had the right to be liked. Does anyone want meat? If you want meat, come and help yourself. After a few bites, there was still a lot left on Super Chen's plate. Today he still had to control his appetite. Dopigua didn't stand on ceremony at all, and ate all the remaining meat on Super Chen's plate. Why aren't you eating? After taking the meat from Super Chen's plate to his side, Dopigua looked at Fangxing. In number 60 high, Dopigua realized that apart from Wang Ling, the person he couldn't see through the most was this class 2's Fangxing. This was a little strange. I don't need to eat. I'm already full from listening to gossip. Fangxing crossed his fingers and narrowed his eyes slightly as he smiled. If Lotus Sun and Xiaoming got together, he would raise both hands in support. But for some reason, as Wang Ling ate, he felt that something wasn't right. He thought of Super Chen's consecrated mouth's conclusion about Lotus Sun and Xiaoming's relationship. At most, it was just a good impression, not necessarily liking. The main point, not necessarily liking, that was to say Lotus Sun actually might not like Xiaoming. This consecrated mouth hadn't officially come to a conclusion. All of a sudden, Wang Ling felt that things had become a little messy. That afternoon, the heroine of this incident, Lotus Sun, finally appeared. The whole of number 60 high was in an uproar once again. After a night of intense mental struggle, Lotus Sun finally decided to look straight at her heart. After class in the afternoon, Xiaoming was practically pushed into grade 1, class 3 by a group of people. He faced Lotus Sun, and the two of them faced the class as well as the corridor full of students from other classes, both of them blushing a little. Go Master Xiaoming. Support Xiaoming, take down Lotus Sun. There was a hubbub of voices in the corridor. Wang Ling sat in a corner of the classroom, silently eating a melon. He really was eating a melon. Wang Ling had a habit of eating fruit after meals. Today's fruit was a watermelon which Mother Wang had brought him in the morning. When he took it out, he casually cast the freeze spell, and he would immediately be able to eat the iced watermelon. Classmate Lotus Sun. Classmate Xiaoming. At that moment, Xiaoming and Lotus Sun spoke at the same time. Everyone's gazes started to drift back and forth between the two of them. You first. You first. Again, they spoke in unison. Everyone thought in their hearts that this was most likely going to work. This was too tacit. Even the rhythm of their words was the same. Then I'll go first, Lotus Sun said slowly after calming down. Hearing Lotus Sun's words, Xiaoming's legs almost gave way. He had never been confessed to by a girl before. If Lotus Sun really did confess to him, he would wake up laughing even in his dreams. Classmate Lotus Sun, go ahead. At that moment, Xiaoming took a deep breath and was already prepared to be confessed to. Lotus Sun looked at Xiaoming with a smile in her eyes. Xiaoming, what you did yesterday was actually because you wanted to use this kind of ingenious method to attract my attention. I actually wasn't angry, Xiaoming. I know Lotus Sun smiled. So you don't have to apologize to me. Besides, it's all thanks to classmate Xiaoming. You gave me the inspiration. Xiaoming was blank. Huh. Lotus Sun took a deep breath and calmed herself down. To be honest, Xiaoming's ingenious method of confession yesterday had indeed given Lotus Sun great inspiration. All along, Lotus Sun had wanted to attract someone's attention, but every time, that person would always ignore her. So after struggling with her thoughts all night and all morning, Lotus Sun was finally enlightened by Xiaoming's method of confession. Now that there were so many onlookers, would she be able to attract his attention if she said loudly in front of everyone that she hated him? She had already thought of her lines, which were mainly to copy what Xiaoming had said yesterday. The lines were as follows. Classmate Wang Ling. I hate you. I hate you the most. I beg you, don't show up in front of me again. At this thought, Lotus Sun turned to look at Wang Ling. Lotus Sun's loud confession rang out. Classmate Wang Ling. I like you. I like you the most. I beg you, please stay by my side. In that instant, Wang Ling was so frightened that he spat out a mouthful of watermelon juice, and even dropped the fork in his hand. Chapter 1091. The sudden confession caught Wang Ling off guard, and he spat out a mouthful of watermelon juice. His originally expressionless face finally broke at that moment as it turned into an extremely horrified expression. But this change in expression happened so quickly that it was almost instantaneous, and a lot of people didn't catch it. The sudden turn of events left everyone speechless. Xia Ming was stupefied, and so were his fans in the corridor. They couldn't figure out how such an astonishing reversal had happened. It turned out that the person classmate Lotus Sun truly liked was still Wang Ling. A lot of people felt that today's outcome was unexpected, but it was reasonable. After all, at the start of grade 1 at number 60 high school, Wang Ling and classmate Lotus Sun had gone to the Xiao family compound for a date. Although they had been attacked by Shadow Stream at that time, they had escaped danger. After that, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's relationship didn't progress any further. Of course, this could also be because the author herself couldn't be bothered to write about it. In short, most people wouldn't be too surprised that something like this had happened again, because it had been foreshadowed before. Wang Ling took a tissue and wiped the watermelon juice from the corner of his mouth. There were a lot of eyes in this situation, and everyone had their own opinions. It wasn't very realistic to directly cast a spell to erase her memory, because there were surveillance cameras in the corridors of the classrooms. There would always be clues. In the end, Wang Ling felt that this was still his fault. It was his singles curse that had been too careless in its design. If the meaning was completely opposite to what was being expressed, it could also be used in reverse to complete his confession. At that moment, after Lotus Sun's resounding confession, the audience fell deathly silent. A lot of busybodies started to clap their hands rhythmically on the side. Together. 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 Wang Ling never thought that such a low-key person like him would actually become the center of attention once again. As onlookers, the public's reaction to this matter was always to watch a good show. Even if there were a lot of Xia Ming's supporters in the crowd, they followed the trend and started to go with the flow to bless the couple. Enough. Amidst the clamor, Xia Ming, who had been standing solemnly on the dais, finally let out a resounding roar. His body trembled slightly as complex emotions intertwined together. This was like a roller coaster ride, and Xia Ming's tense emotions finally exploded in that moment. Wang Ling. Xia Ming's eyes were fixed on Wang Ling, and he trembled with anger. I want to duel with you. Don't leave after school if you have the guts. Wang Ling. Thus on that very day, a battle between the two men officially began. This matter spread like wildfire, and in the end, even the teacher knew about it. Except for more old-fashioned teachers like Teacher Pan, most teachers turned a blind eye to students' emotional problems. As long as they didn't cross the line, it was very normal for men and women to develop good feelings for each other. Who doesn't have youth? The teachers in the office were all discussing. If it were any other student, they wouldn't just sit and watch. Lotus Sun's situation was a little more complicated. Student Lotus Sun has always been reserved. Why is she so simple and crude this time? You've met someone you really like. This is youth. Old Antique chuckled. But I didn't expect this kid Xia Ming to actually have the courage to declare war on our classes. Wang Ling. This kid has always been very timid. It seems that Student Sun's confession was a big blow to him. Then what's Student Wang Ling's attitude? The female teacher asked nosily. What attitude could Wang Ling have? Naturally, he maintained his deadpan expression. Teachers who were familiar with Wang Ling actually knew what kind of person he was. He was a very average child. His grades were always in the middle, neither improving nor falling behind. He was usually a man of few words, and didn't speak more than 10 words a day. But it just so happened that a high-profile young miss like Student Lotus Sun had taken a liking to such a taciturn gourd. The teachers thought it over, and suddenly felt that there was actually the principle that yin and yang coexisted, and that things would always move in the opposite direction when pushed to the extreme. Wang Ling, there won't be a problem. As the discussion in the office was in full swing, Teacher Pan pushed up her gold-rimmed glasses and suddenly said this out of the blue. Few boys might be able to control themselves in the face of student Lotus Sun's sugar-coated bullets, but Teacher Pan knew Wang Ling very well. It definitely wouldn't be easy to truly sway Wang Ling's heart. What should we do? Should we organize a fight after school? Old Antique took a sip of coffee and asked tentatively. They won't fight, Teacher Pan said confidently. If they make a mistake, they'll be punished according to school rules. All the teachers in the office were silent. They stared at Teacher Pan's meticulous and serious expression, and didn't say anything. A few minutes later, Teacher Pan left with a pile of exam papers, and the office started to bustle with activity. Teacher Wang. A female teacher rushed up to Old Antique. What's in your snack aisle? Old Antique opened a drawer. Everything you want, it's here. I'll buy a bag of popcorn. I want to watch a fight, said the female teacher. Old Antique. The moment she opened her mouth, the office instantly boiled over. I'll buy 2 bags. I'll also bet 200 on Xiaming. Xiaming will definitely win. I'll also bet on Xiaming. Xiaming's exam grades are pretty good, and his body techniques are also excellent. I'll bet 1,000. You're all betting on Xiaming? Old Antique simply couldn't believe it. In just a few minutes, the odds between Wang Ling and Xiaming had already reached 100. Old Antique silently took out 50 yuan in change from his pocket and joined in the fun. You're all betting on Xiaming? Then I'll support our class's Wang Ling. As Teacher Pan had said, Wang Ling had always hated being the center of attention. If it had just been Lotus Sun's confession, he could actually think of a way to deal with it. But Wang Ling never thought that things would actually develop to the point of a fight. And now, the whole school knew that he and Xiaming were going to duel for love. Accepting the challenge would only further increase Lotus Sun's impression of him. If he didn't accept the challenge, he would also be despised and spurned by many of the boys at school. Wang Ling couldn't make a choice in this situation, because it seemed that he would become the center of attention if he didn't accept the challenge. Compared with being spurned by the whole school, Wang Ling still decided to accept the challenge. But it was really tiring to fake a fight. For Wang Ling, Xiaming was really too weak and couldn't withstand a single blow at all. Chapter 1092. After school, there was a sea of people on the sports field. From grade 1 to grade 3, boys and girls surrounded the plastic running track, waiting for this impending duel between men. The teachers stood on the teaching building and observed the situation in secret. They would take action when necessary to maintain order. And at the same time, they sighed in their hearts at Lotus Sun's influence. As expected of the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group, if the target of the 2 boys' fight at this time hadn't been Lotus Sun, it probably wouldn't have attracted the attention of all the teachers and students in the school. It would be great if they could be so enthusiastic about the supplementary lessons after school. One teacher smiled bitterly. But why didn't the director or the headmaster stop them? The headmaster said that it's good to let the students compare notes now that school has just started. Also, there's going to be an exchange meet between schools in Peiyuan district and other districts soon. Another exchange meet? What's it this time? Swordsmanship? Talismans? Or survival skills? I heard it's a body techniques exchange. Xiaming is actually an outstanding candidate. Each school will form a delegation of 10 people, and Headmaster Chen's name list has already been confirmed. It's just that Headmaster Chen has been stuck between student Xiaming and student Wang Ling for the last spot. In terms of overall grades, Wang Ling's grades aren't as good as Xiaming's, right? That's true. But in all the school exchange events that student Wang Ling participated in the first half of the semester, our school won in the end. After this teacher said this, the other teachers on the side suddenly understood. The power of a mascot was still formidable. They had almost forgotten that this student Wang Ling was also a mascot. The duel was about to begin, but no one saw Lotus Sun at all. After confessing her love to Wang Ling in public, Lotus Sun was so ashamed that she blushed and went home surrounded by a group of bodyguards. However, the live broadcast of the duel was still broadcast live by the bodyguards who remained at the school, so Lotus Sun could watch it at home. At that moment, she stared at the sea of people on the sports field with a very complicated expression on her face. She had never thought that there would be a day when she would confess to a boy in front of so many people. Furthermore, it had actually triggered this battle of jealousy. It actually wasn't her fault that she was good-looking. On the other side, in the office on the top floor of Huagua Water Curtain Group's headquarters building, in front of the huge chairman's office, a dignified old man with white hair combed back and a pipe in his mouth also noticed what happened in the school. Sun Yiyuan, the chairman of Huagua Water Curtain Group, already knew that his granddaughter had publicly confessed to a boy. After learning about this, Grandpa Sheng was also very shocked, and he almost choked on the spit in his mouth. What? Did Rongrong confess to someone? Sun Yiyuan felt incredulous. Since ancient times, it was only his granddaughter who was confessed to and then given a good person card. Taking the initiative to confess to someone was something that old man Sun didn't even dare to imagine. Yes, I heard that the young lady confessed to a boy very loudly and said that she wanted to be with him forever. The assistant in the white uniform described the situation in a euphemistic manner. He thought that old man Sun would be angry. After all, it wasn't like there hadn't been some sons of high-ranking officials who pestered the young lady before. However, after receiving a huge sum of money from the old man, these people had left her side in a half-bribe and half-blackmail manner. However, old man Sun's attitude was somewhat unexpected. Not only was the old man not angry, but he also looked quite happy this time. Rongrong has never told any guy that she wants to be with him before. It seems that she's serious this time. Is that what the chairman thinks? What else? Old man Sun Yiyuan then asked. Which boy did Rongrong confess to? The assistant pulled up the video feed from number 60 High's live broadcast, and then pointed to a handsome student with dead fish eyes on the screen. Actually, the chairman might have heard of this person before. He's the student who went to the Xiao family compound with the young lady last semester, and was attacked by Shadow Stream. Oh, so it's him. But what's his name again? I think he's called Wang. The assistant patted his head. For some reason, the words were clearly on the tip of his tongue, but he couldn't bring himself to say them. At that moment, Wang Ling's great shielding spell was still working to a certain extent. The effect of the great shielding spell would only disappear after the user had seen Wang Ling's real face. Of course, the real face here was worth seeing Wang Ling in person, and not through this kind of live broadcast. Even if the assistant saw Wang Ling's face in the video feed, he still wouldn't be able to recall any information about him. It's fine if you can't remember, we'll look into it later. Watching the battle is more important. Old man Sun waved his hand indifferently, and the assistant finally breathed a sigh of relief. The assistant used a magic treasure to project the live broadcast image in the air. Both of them were wearing school uniforms, but old man Sun could still see through Wang Ling's trademark dead fish eyes and fix his gaze firmly on Wang Ling. His looks are passable, but because of these dead fish eyes, he looks a little listless. Old man Sun nodded thoughtfully. If this classmate Wang confirms that he wants to go out with Rongrong later, find someone to ask if he's willing to have his double eyelids and canthus removed. I'll pay for the cost and compensation. The assistant was silent for a while, then said, but Miss said she likes everything about classmate Wang. Oh, is that so? Rongrong actually likes this type? When they went to the Xiao family compound before, I thought Rongrong just randomly found a boy to play with her. I didn't expect her to fall in love with him then. Old man Sun sighed. Forget it. Since Rongrong likes him, he can keep his eyelids. But, after saying that, old man Sun turned to look at the assistant next to him. Why does Rongrong always look for you to tell her everything? The assistant was blank for a moment, and the expression on his face turned fearful. At first, Miss wanted me to keep it a secret, but this matter attracted too much attention, and I was worried that it wouldn't be good, so I decided to tell the chairman. It's good that you didn't hide it from me. But you also promised Rongrong not to tell me, and you didn't keep your promise. Your merits and demerits offset each other. You don't have any objections to this, right? No, the assistant's heart. MMP old man Sun continued to look at the screen. How old is this classmate Wang? How is he compared to Rongrong? He doesn't look small. The assistant pulled open his pants and glanced at them. I don't know exactly how big he is, but he should be bigger than mine, right? Compared to Miss, there's no comparison. Even Miss doesn't have one. Shut up. I'm asking about his age. I want to know if he's older or younger than Rongrong. I want to be precise down to the month and day. Chapter 1093. The assistant sighed silently. It turned out that he was asking about his age. He was the one who had been corrupted. It was all because of those old drivers in the company who had led him astray during the team building last year. Now he would go into autopilot mode at the slightest hint. Those people who preached that life was full of suffering, and that driving for fun were the real source of all evil. The assistant recalled Wang Ling's birthday. It was the same as before, but he couldn't bring himself to say it even though it was on the tip of his tongue. Helpless, the assistant could only make up a date. I remember it was at the end of the year? He was born in the same year as Mississippi. Is it at the end of the year? Old Man Sun was lost in thought. He hadn't expected that the boy his granddaughter had taken a fancy to would be born at such a suitable time. Do you remember when Rongrong was born, and that immortal master told a fortune? Chairman, you mean? The assistant was startled. This was actually a family secret, and a small assistant like him shouldn't know about it. But because he had been with Old Man Sun for a long time, there were times when the old man would say something to him when he was vexed and depressed to dispel the bitterness in his heart. When the yin and yang are in chaos, I will dye the blue sky with my membrane blood. Old Man Sun's thoughts drifted as he recalled what that famous immortal master had said back then. It wasn't a secret in the family that Lotus Sun had this so-called yin and yang death tribulation, but many people still treated it as a joke. Although the death tribulation hadn't come true until now, Old Man Sun had always firmly believed it, because that immortal master had clearly said back then. This tribulation had something to do with peach blossoms. In other words, if Rongrong was in love, it was very likely that this problem would occur. Most importantly, it seemed to be a precursor to triggering the yin and yang death tribulation, which had now been preliminarily verified. Old Man Sun gazed at the image on the screen as he paid close attention to the fight between Wang Ling and Xia Ming. Back then, that immortal master had said that the person who set the curse was born at the beginning of the year, and the person who dispelled the curse was born at the end of the year. And now, it just so happened that these two teenagers of the same age were fighting over his granddaughter's affections. Although the yin and yang death tribulation hadn't been verified, Old Man Sun suddenly felt a little restless. Do you have any information on this, Xia Ming? We've already started looking into it, and we should have news soon, the assistant replied. At that moment, when they looked at the image on the screen again, it looked like the battle between Xia Ming and Wang Ling would break out at any moment. Number 60 High School had 2 elite classes in total. Since Xia Ming and Fang Xing were in the same class, he naturally wouldn't be too weak. He was a top student who excelled in his studies, and in the eyes of the teachers, was a straight A student. If it was a regular class student fighting Xia Ming, their chances of winning would naturally be very low. But his opponent was Wang Ling, and those who only knew Wang Ling's true combat strength were well aware of the gap between them. On the side, Jin Yuan, Gu Xuanji, Lu Qingyi and Wang Zhen sighed with emotion. Standing in the line of students, they used a telepathic spell to communicate in secret. Gu Xuanji: I didn't expect Senior Wang to actually accept the challenge. I'm very curious about how he's going to fight this match. Wang Zhen nodded. The disparity in strength is too great. Unless it's an act, there's no way this Xia Ming's body can withstand a single breath from Senior Wang. Wang Zhen's terrifying image of Wang Ling's strength was practically etched into his brain. These experts from the domain of the gods couldn't even last 3 moves against Wang Ling, let alone these foundation establishment students. Hit him with his head? He wouldn't be able to beat them even if he took off his head. Xia Ming's gaze was fixed on Wang Ling as he pondered what method he should use to defeat him in the cruelest way possible. There were only 2 elite classes in total, and there were 40 students in both classes. Xia Ming's overall ranking was 3rd, while Wang Ling was 20th. How could a student in the middle of the pack fight him? Hit him with his head? He wouldn't be able to beat them even if he took off his head. Xia Ming took a deep breath, then started to slowly accumulate spirit energy in his dantian. Streams of pure white energy swirled around him in torrents. When a cultivator was accumulating energy, their spirit chi would change color under the influence of their spirit root. This was the principle of spirit chi coloring. However, Xiaming's spirit chi was pure white, which was far beyond the expectations of many of the spectating students. Pure white spirit chi? I remember this Xiaming, isn't he? Oh, so he's a descendant of that ancient divine clan? Ancient divine clan? Even many of the teachers in the teaching building were a little surprised. This is... Wang Zhen narrowed his eyes as he immediately deduced something. There's no mistaking it, it's the ancient divine clan. Lu Qingyi nodded. In the four-person mental barrier, Gu Xuanji was also secretly astonished when he saw Xiaming display this level of power. A descendant of the ancient divine clan? Interesting. I never thought that the ancient divine clan would actually exist on Earth. Jin Yuan sked. The so-called ancient divine clan didn't refer to a single clan, but the combined surnames of the earliest cultivators on Earth in the era of spirit energy. Xiaming's Xia family was a member of the ancient divine clan. But there were a lot of people on Earth with the surname Xia, and not all of them were descendants of the ancient divine clan. The difference lay in the special attribute of the ancient divine clan's spirit root. As long as they were members of the ancient divine clan, their spirit root would resonate with the power of the underground spirit vein. The spirit energy in the underground spirit vein was so pure that when the spirit vein resonated with the spirit root in the ancient divine clan, it would manifest a kind of pure white spirit chi. Many people present were a little surprised that Xiaming was a member of the ancient divine clan. They suddenly remembered that Xiaming seemed to be deliberately hiding something every time he used a spell. Now that they thought about it, Xiaming was probably using a special method to suppress the neutralization of the attributes between the underground spirit vein and his own spirit root. In this way, he could hide his identity as a member of the ancient divine clan. Now that Xiaming's identity had been exposed, the whole audience was instantly in an uproar. After a member of the ancient divine clan resonated with the underground spirit vein, they would almost never run out of spirit energy in a fight at the same realm. That was to say, Xiaming could last for a very, very long time in a battle of attrition. And what was a foundation establishment cultivator most afraid of? It was a protracted battle. Because of the limitations of their own spirit energy, it was very easy for foundation establishment cultivators to run out of spirit energy in the process of casting spells. To put it bluntly, it was because their MP was too low. In Xiaming's current situation, even though his MP was also very low, he could replenish it as he fought. At that moment, the cheers in the audience instantly shifted to Xiaming. In many people's view, Wang Ling already had almost no chance of winning against Xiaming. Whether it was in terms of overall ranking or the uniqueness of his physique, compared with Xiaming, who was a member of the ancient divine clan, Wang Ling seemed too ordinary in all aspects. Chapter 1094. In the headmaster's office, number 60 high school's headmaster Chen Tianxiang and director Shi from the Office of Teaching were also paying attention to this battle that the whole school was watching. Xiaming's identity as a member of the ancient divine clan had always been a secret, and no one had expected it to be exposed in today's battle. Looking at Headmaster Chen's calm expression, Director Shi was even more certain that Headmaster Chen had deliberately allowed this battle to continue. As a descendant of the ancient divine clan, Xiaming had a natural sense of superiority over other students because of his natural advantage in spirit root. This sense of superiority was a double-edged sword. A person with a sense of superiority would be more confident in their actions, but if they were overconfident, it wouldn't be confidence but arrogance. There is only one descendant of the ancient divine clan in our number 60 high school. This can be considered my test for him, Headmaster Chen said slowly. Number 60 High had also participated in a lot of activities with other schools before, but because Xiaming had signed an agreement with Number 60 High that he couldn't expose his identity as a member of the ancient divine clan, his performance hadn't caught everyone's attention. Whether it was the exchange event with Number 59 High or the joint military training for the 6 schools, Headmaster Chen had originally wanted to test Xiaming's temperament and see how long he could keep his identity hidden. In the end, He hadn't expected Xiaoming to completely expose himself in the second half of senior grade 1. This result also made Headmaster Chen fall into deep thought. To hide one's strength and live as an ordinary person, he believed that this was not something an ordinary person could do. There would always be things in life that didn't go your way. For example, in order to compete with classmate Wang Ling for Lotus Sun's attention, Xiaoming had disregarded the confidentiality agreement and exposed his identity as a member of the ancient divine clan without permission. In Headmaster Chen's view, in the end, this was just the temperament of a child. Xiaoming's growth was far from enough. Number 60 high school taught and educated people, but the truth was that Headmaster Chen was more concerned with cultivating a student's temperament. As teachers, they couldn't just focus on their students' grades. In the end, they still had to guide them onto the right path and cultivate them into people who were useful to society, who were grateful and knew how to contribute. In contrast, Headmaster Chen was actually more satisfied with Wang Ling. Although Wang Ling's grades had always been average since he entered the elite class, he was clearly much better than Xiaoming's mentality. A normal student would be anxious when his grades were average all the time, but Wang Ling? He ate and drank as he pleased, completely disregarding his mediocre results. He hadn't even given a clear response to Lotus Sun's confession. Coming out to accept the challenge now was nothing more than a helpless act of going with the flow. As number 60 High's mascot, Headmaster Chen felt that he hadn't chosen the wrong person. From the previous Spirit Sword Exchange meet to the combined drill for the 6 schools, Wang Ling's performance had always been outstanding. Now the onlookers were divided into 3 factions. The first group supported Xiaoming. After Xiaoming's identity as a descendant of the ancient divine clan was exposed, they looked forward to his brilliant performance even more. Lotus Sun's confession to Wang Ling really drew too much hatred, and a lot of people wanted nothing more than to rush up and beat Wang Ling up. The second faction was the 5 big shots, Wang Zhen, Gu Xuanji, Lu Qingyi, Fang Xing and Jin Yuan. Of course, they unwaveringly supported Wang Ling in their hearts, and at the same time wanted to see how Wang Ling would deal with this boring battle. They didn't care at all about winning or losing, and only cared about what they could learn from Wang Ling. The third faction naturally didn't need to be mentioned. Although Wang Ling was usually unsociable and didn't like talking to people, he wasn't completely without friends. Super Chun and Dopigua. Their fighting strength and rallying power alone were enough to help Wang Ling win over a large number of stable supporters. At the very least, everyone in Grade 1, Class 3 supported him. Even if they disagreed with this, the students in his class didn't dare express it. Because commissary in charge of studies Little Peanut was also Wang Ling's supporter, they were worried that if they openly disagreed, they wouldn't have enough time to catch up on homework and copy homework in the morning. At that moment, Xiaoming felt that his spirit root had already resonated with it, and a torrent of white spirit qi turned into fine threads that flowed up and down his body. It was indeed astonishing that a mere foundation establishment cultivator could have such an enormous amount of spirit power reserves. But to Wang Ling, this kind of spirit power reserve was child's play. Every pore on Wang Ling's body was in fact a small world that could store enormous amounts of spirit power for him to use. Apart from his pores, the same was true of every cell in his body. There were about 80 trillion cells in the human body. Ignoring the cells that died due to metabolism every day, there were 80 trillion small worlds in Wang Ling's body. Not only that, even his fingernails were filled with spirit power. However, the spirit power in his fingernails was a backup, and wasn't as exaggerated as a small world. The spirit power in one fingernail was about the same as a soul formation cultivator's spirit power reserves. Xiaoming currently didn't even have a quarter of the spirit power in his fingernails. What should he do? Should he die with Xiaoming? When he saw the confidence in Xiaoming's eyes, Wang Ling was also secretly calculating in his heart. The only way he could think of was to fight Xiaoming to a draw. That way, the situation might calm down. Classmate Wang Ling, please enlighten me. At that moment, Xiaoming, who had already finished gathering his strength, rushed forward. He spread his feet, and in just a few moves he had shortened the distance between them. A gust of wind from a fist whistled toward Wang Ling's face. Feeling the wind pressure from it, Wang Ling's first reaction wasn't to take the punch, but to use his body movement to dodge. You shouldn't hit someone in the face. Wang Ling thought that although his face was only average after being pinched, he had never experienced being hit in the face before. He was the only one who would hit someone else. On the other hand, Wang Ling was also considering Xiaming's safety. If that punch just now had hit Xiaming's face accurately, even if Wang Ling had deliberately restrained the backlash, Xiaming would have suffered a comminuted fracture at the very least. The scene of that Shadow Stream Red Ribbon assassin who had failed to assassinate Lotus Sun at school back then and suffered a backlash was still fresh in Wang Ling's mind. Now that everyone was watching, Wang Ling didn't want history to repeat itself. He threw out several consecutive punches in a fluid and smooth manner. Do you only know how to dodge, Wang Ling? Xiaming mocked Wang Ling as he punched, intentionally or otherwise. To Wang Ling, this kind of mockery was child's play and couldn't truly enrage him at all. Xiaming had also scored very high in the body technique exam. He cultivated the chaos-flowing water fist technique. This fist technique was very consistent and explosive, and it used both fists and legs. However, because it consumed a lot of energy, many people would feel tired at the end of the technique. But Xiaming was different. He had the advantage of being a descendant of the ancient divine clan, and his endurance was guaranteed. Thus, this chaos-flowing water fist technique was a little difficult for Wang Ling. Every move was a slap in the face. This person was really merciless. Wang Ling still didn't make a move, and continued to dodge Xiaming's punches with his flirtatious movements. But this scene made Wang Zhen and the others frown slightly. This kind of dodging seemed meaningless, but for some reason, Wang Zhen felt that Wang Ling was doing it on purpose, as if he was deliberately guiding Xiaming's punches. Sure enough, in the next moment, Xiaming's punch actually changed direction the moment it was thrown, and in the end, it actually went for his own face. Chapter 1095. Just like that, Xiaming was punched in the right side of his face. But it wasn't Wang Ling who had punched him, but Xiaming himself. The fist techniques of cultivators were extensible. In other words, at the same time the fist was punched out, the spirit energy molecules attached to the fist could drive a portion of the air, causing the invisible air and spirit energy molecules to combine, thus forming an invisible fist membrane around the fist. The thickness of the fist membrane could be thick or thin, and it mainly depended on the control and grasp of the cultivator's own spirit energy. Thus, when Xiaming's punch was secretly guided by Wang Ling, it was already too late for him to control it, and the punch accurately hit Xiaming's own face. Wang Ling's extremely misleading body technique was just like a Tai Chi pushing hand, which effortlessly dispelled Xiaming's punch. But this kind of body technique looked a little baffling. In the eyes of the real bigwigs like Gu Xuanji, it looked like a god, but in the eyes of ordinary people, it looked more like a mistake caused by Wang Ling dodging in a panic. To put it bluntly, most of the people here felt that Wang Ling's luck had given him the upper hand in this duel. As expected of our school's mascot, his luck is too good. That's right, Xiaming's chaotic flowing water fist technique is famous for being chaotic and fast. If he doesn't practice it well, it'll be like he's sacrificing himself to hurt the enemy. Listening to the discussions around him, Xiaming couldn't help falling silent. What the F***K was hurting himself to hurt the enemy? It was clearly this kid in front of him. As an opponent, no one had a more intuitive feeling than Xiaming. While Gu Xuanji and the others had already seen through the mystery of Wang Ling's body technique, most of the people present were still in the dark. Only Xiaming was left to face Wang Ling's strange body technique alone. He didn't want to admit that a person whose grades were always in the middle of the pack could actually beat him in body technique, so he could only silently swallow his frustration. At this point in the fight, Xiaming actually already felt that the outcome of this fight was already decided. Wang Ling's body technique was so strange that Xiaming couldn't use his fist technique at all. Furthermore, the other party was deliberately guiding Xiaming's punches like he was doing Tai Chi, and as they fought, Xiaming was injured by several of his own punches. A few minutes later, Xiaming was punched again and sent flying. This was the 11th time Xiaming had been punched and sent flying. In the beginning, Xiaming also thought that there might be something wrong with his fist technique, so he changed his punches several times to attack Wang Ling. But it turned out that this had nothing to do with his fist technique at all. It was to the extent that Xiaoming didn't even plan to use his fist technique in the end. He directly pounced on Wang Ling and began to unleash a series of violent blows without any regard for the rules. This kind of arrogant attitude, like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey, caused everyone present to be horrified. In the principal's office, Principal Chun, Director Shi, and a few physical education teachers were also watching the battle. "Principal, what kind of fist technique is this?" a PE teacher asked in shock. "Bastard fist," Headmaster Chen replied. "Tortoise fist? What kind of punch is this?" "When you were young, did you fight with the kids next door over toys?" "Yes, I did." "Back then you fought with your tortoise fists." The so-called tortoise fist is a casual fighting style that doesn't focus on any kind of technique. There's a saying that random fists can kill an old master. That's how the story came about. Headmaster Chen sighed. "Then classmate Wang Ling's body technique is the same?" "That's right, this is the tortoise body technique. Moving at will is the highest realm of body techniques. It's all about luck." Headmaster Chen sighed emotionally at Wang Ling's luck. All the teachers. As Headmaster Chen said, Xiaoming's tortoise fist technique didn't have any palm techniques. It was actually just the most ordinary random fists. But using random fists without using spirit energy would consume a lot of physical strength. After a few sets of random fists, Xiaoming felt that his physical strength had already reached its limit. On the other hand, Wang Ling had been dodging with his body technique from beginning to end. Looking completely at ease, seeing Xiaoming's hateful gaze, Wang Ling finally realized the importance of acting. Indeed, he had been acting a little too much. After fighting for so long, even if he wasn't panting, his face should have been a little red. Thus, Wang Ling adjusted his skin tone to make himself a little smoky. In passing, he opened his sweat glands and did his best to force a few drops of sweat to roll down his cheeks as he pretended to be very tired. Wang Ling wouldn't feel tired even if he fought like this for several hundred years. But in the end, Xiaoming was still an ordinary cultivator, compared to Wang Ling, and there was no way his physical strength could be limitless. Even if he had a natural advantage in terms of spirit root, there were still certain limitations. Wang Ling secretly opened his king's eye and looked at Xiaoming's stamina bar. This was Wang Ling's big data spell, which could display some of the values he wanted to see in the form of a horizontal bar graph. For example, his current chi and blood points, his current spirit energy points, his stamina points, and so on. Xiaoming's stamina points had already reached their limit, and he was only a hair's breadth away from completely collapsing. Wang Ling took a deep breath and calculated when Xiaoming's next punch would be launched. Thus, as Xiaoming roared and charged at him, Wang Ling's brain instantly started working at top speed. He captured each of Xiaoming's movements, and in the end, broke them down and read them into his brain for simulation calculations. He had to accurately calculate the speed of Xiaoming's punches, the time it would take for him to charge over, and the time it would take for him to use up the last of his stamina points before he fell to the ground. For the last punch, Wang Ling didn't intend to use his body movements to guide Xiaoming's punches. After all, Xiaoming had already been badly beaten up. His cheeks were swollen like walnuts, and even his nostrils were full of blood. Everyone couldn't stop sighing at this scene. Earlier, some of them had even discussed going forward to mediate if either side was beaten to the point of bleeding. But in this situation, none of the students were able to persuade him at all. Xiaoming was the one who had punched him. Xiaoming was the one who had injured himself. Every punch had landed on his own face. How the F***K were they supposed to persuade him? Wang Ling had chosen a very tricky angle for Xiaoming's last punch. From this angle, it looked like Xiaoming's punch had hit Wang Ling, but in fact hadn't hit him at all. After this punch, Xiaoming finally fell to the ground as his stamina ran out. Wang Ling had calculated his chance, and followed Xiaoming to the ground and lay on the side. Now, Wang Ling suddenly understood how difficult it had been for those old men and women in Peiyuan district to blackmail people back then. Faking an accident was truly an art that required acting skills. Chapter 1096. After Wang Ling and Xiaoming both landed on the ground, The teachers at the scene swarmed forward to maintain order. Wang Ling had created the illusion that he had been punched, when in fact, he hadn't been injured at all. But Xiaoming was in a more miserable state. A male teacher carrying a medical kit quickly rushed to the scene. He was wearing a pair of ripped jeans and a striped shirt, as well as a white coat. This was number 60 high school's school doctor, Xiang Yiyun. However, Wang Ling had almost no impression of this school doctor. He had never been to the infirmary since entering number 60 high school. But Xiang Yiyun still had an impression of Wang Ling. On one hand, Wang Ling was number 60 high's mascot. On the other hand, Wang Ling remembered that this was probably the student who had been ambushed by criminals at the school gate and fallen into a space fissure, but had unexpectedly survived. Xiang Yiyun remembered that he had given Wang Ling a wreath before. He didn't expect the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group to like this type. Now Xiang Yiyun was wondering whether he should follow Wang Ling's example and get a dead fish eye. Teacher Xiang, how's the situation? Xia Ming and Wang Ling's teacher in charge were both present, and Teacher Pan's expression was unusually concerned. On the surface, Wang Ling didn't seem to have sustained any external injuries, and she was worried that Xia Ming's punch just now might have hurt him. The truth was that Teacher Pan had called the Wang family's small villa when the fight between Xia Ming and Wang Ling had started, and it was Mother Wang who had answered the phone. A very short conversation took place between Teacher Pan and Mother Wang. Is that classmate Wang Ling's mother? That was it. A student from another class challenged classmate Wang Ling to a duel after school, and classmate Wang Ling accepted the challenge because of the crowd's encouragement. I don't know. Ling Ling got into a fight? Is the classmate who arranged a fight with him okay? On the other side of the phone, Mother Wang's mood was clearly down. She couldn't imagine Wang Ling fighting with other people at all. If Ling Ling wasn't paying attention, the other side would start filming the Headless Horseman anomaly. At that moment, Teacher Pan looked out the window. He just happened to see Xia Ming being guided by Wang Ling's body technique as he flew off. That student Xia has flown out now. Teacher Pan answered truthfully. Mother Wang was scared out of her wits by this answer. She was already unsteady and felt like the sky was falling down on her. After a few minutes of silence, Mother Wang said in a trembling voice, "Then, Teacher Pan, please ask the parents on the other side how much they're willing to pay to settle this privately." Teacher Pan was stunned. It took a few more minutes for Teacher Pan to explain to Mother Wang that the situation wasn't that serious. When Teacher Pan looked out the window again, Wang Ling and Xia Ming had already fallen to the ground. Classmate Wang Ling's mom, it looks like both of them have collapsed. Do you want to come to school to take a look? Teacher Pan asked again. Is classmate Xia Ming dead? No. Oh, that's good. Who knew that when Mother Wang, who had just been scared to death, heard this result, her tone relaxed. It's fine as long as the other side is fine. Don't worry too much about my Ling Ling. With that, Mother Wang hung up. Teacher Pan was even more shocked. There was actually such a parent in this world. But from the looks of it now, this should be the legendary reaction of a biological mother, right? In that instant, Teacher Pan instantly felt that Wang Ling was really a pitiful child. He ate crappy videos like crispy noodle snacks every day, and his own parents still didn't care about him. As the teacher in charge, she really should show him more love and care. Wang Ling. After Xiang Yiyun's initial examination, it was confirmed that Xia Ming and Wang Ling's lives weren't in danger. It was just that Xia Ming's condition was a little more tragic. Xiang Yiyun wrote in a small notebook that only the doctor could understand. Classmate Xia, my initial diagnosis is that he has a slight concussion and a slight skull fracture. After using an eye technique, I determined that the fracture is 1 millimeter. 1 millimeter, it shouldn't be a big problem. Xia Ming's teacher in charge heaved a sigh of relief. I'm not done yet, don't worry. In addition to the above problems, classmate Xia Ming's sternum is fractured, his calf bone is fractured, 3 of his ribs are broken, and his right arm is dislocated. I've already helped him reattach the dislocation. As for the rest, my suggestion is to apply a special bone-breaking, life-prolonging ointment externally, and he'll recover in 2 days, Teacher Xiang said. I didn't expect it to be so serious. This classmate Wang Ling is really ruthless. Xia Ming's teacher in charge grit his teeth. No, this has nothing to do with classmate Wang Ling, Xiang Yiyan said. I've already extracted the DNA cells from the wound, and there's only classmate Xiaming's DNA. That is to say, these external and internal injuries were all caused by classmate Xiaming alone. He hit himself. This is a fair and just assessment. If you don't believe me, you can keep the wound and send it to a Class 3 Grade A hospital for reassessment. But if there's a delay on the way, classmate Xiaming will be the one to suffer. The longer it takes, the more likely there will be repercussions. Oh. All the teachers couldn't help falling silent. He had hit himself and ended up in the hospital. There was no way to explain this. Then what about classmate Wang Ling? He can't be completely unscathed, can he? Xia Ming's teacher in charge was still a little unconvinced. He didn't believe it. Xia Ming had been injured all over during the fight, while Wang Ling had been completely unscathed. Actually, Xia Ming's teacher in charge's words reminded Wang Ling. He should also design his own injuries, otherwise it would be too fake. After thinking it over, Wang Ling forced his heart to stop. When the school doctor, Xiang Yiyun, examined Wang Ling's body again, the expression on his face finally turned to one of alarm. This classmate Wang Ling was still breathing just now, but his heart suddenly stopped. All the teachers present felt their hearts clench at this result. How could this be? He was physically exhausted from the long fight, and when he fell to the ground, his spirit power was blocked and his blood vessels were blocked. Dr. Xiang thought of a reasonable explanation, and then he immediately started to perform high-frequency compressions on Wang Ling's chest, intending to perform CPR. One of you help me. I'll do chest compressions. The remaining one will help Wang Ling with CPR. Wang Ling. As soon as Dr. Xiang said this, several male teachers immediately stepped forward. I'll do it. Do you know how to do CPR? A male teacher retorted. I don't. But I can learn from experience, the male teacher replied. Just blow it in, right? Should I stick out my tongue? As soon as he said this, Wang Ling sat up straight in fright. Chapter 1097. This kind of sober reaction was not so much a shock, but rather a panic. This Xiang Yiyan also had to be added to the list of resistance. Looking at Xiang Yiyan's evil smile, Wang Ling fell into deep thought. He was sure that this doctor had probably noticed something and knew that Wang Ling was pretending to be dead, so he had deliberately arranged for the show just now. But it probably wasn't possible for him to see through Wang Ling's tricks. It was more likely that this school doctor had been guessing for many years. In short, this Xiang Yiyun was a dangerous person. It was better to pay more attention to him in the future. Xiang Yiyun crouched down to check Wang Ling's condition again, then confirmed with the teachers around him. There's no problem anymore. That was a stressful situation just now. Young people are in good health, so there's a chance that they'll recover on their own. If they're older and have a lower realm, they'll need assistance. As long as classmate Wang Ling is fine, that's good. The teachers finally relaxed. Only the male teacher who had been about to rescue Wang Ling just now looked gloomy. What's wrong, Teacher Li? Hey, I still don't understand. Should I stick out my tongue for CPR? How about we let classmate Wang Ling lie down again, and we can study it in depth? Everyone. Wang Ling, there's a limit to joking. Wang Ling is my student, so I'm taking him away. The rest of you, go and take care of classmate Xiaming. Teacher Pan stood up again at this critical moment. Of course she knew that this Teacher Li was actually joking. Teacher Li Renyong had a habit of making jokes regardless of the occasion. Thus, under Teacher Pan's protection, Wang Ling was taken back to the office. Teacher Pan took out a form from a drawer and gave it to Wang Ling. At the top of the form was Domestic Violence Questionnaire. Wang Ling. Classmate Wang Ling, I actually wanted to inform your parents to come to school this time. But I never thought that they wouldn't be worried about your health at all. Teacher Pan sighed, then looked at Wang Ling and said earnestly, Tell me honestly, have your parents ever been violent towards you at home? Wang Ling. Teacher Pan. Don't be afraid, I'm here. If someone is violent towards you at home, you must be brave enough to say it. Wang Ling wanted to cry, but had no tears. Violence. There really wasn't. Father and Mother Wang had been too good to him since he was a child, and practically cherished him in the palm of their hands. Instead, Wang Ling felt a little apologetic for taking such good care of his parents. But Father and Mother Wang indeed had no other choice. Not long after Wang Ling was born, their whole family had moved to such a remote villa in the suburbs so that they wouldn't cause trouble for their neighbors. Think about it. If you were to live with a nuclear bomb in your arms every day, you would probably be on tenterhooks every day. He shook his head. He couldn't possibly say something that didn't exist. Father and Mother Wang were very good to him. It would be even better if Father Wang didn't find an excuse to dock his allowance. Teacher Pan clearly had some misunderstanding about Father and Mother Wang, and it would be fine as long as she made things clear. Wang Ling hadn't expected old Pan to be so concerned about him at the start of the semester. This was a good thing. At the very least, it proved Teacher Pan's sense of responsibility as a teacher of the people. But for Wang Ling, too much concern was trouble. He just wanted to be an ordinary student and finish his high school life peacefully. Classmate Wang Ling, don't be afraid. Cold violence is also violence, Teacher Pan said very seriously. Wang Ling, not good at expressing himself in words, Wang Ling could only lower his head and start to fill in the survey form. He used his superb writing skills for high school exams to express Father and Mother Wang's meticulous care for him since he was a child. There was a pattern to writing for exams, and Wang Ling could analyze and summarize it. He could predict in advance what angle the teacher marking the papers liked to start from. Some were emotional, some were creative, some were elaborate, some were realistic, and some were close to life. Wang Ling had a hunch that Teacher Pan liked to read more emotional things, so he turned this essay attached to the Heartfelt Thoughts column into a chicken soup essay. Thus, Wang Ling's essay was littered with golden sentences. 1. My parents are like candles. They give off a little heat and give off a little light, giving people light and warmth. And I am like a small flame, so weak that I can be accidentally blown out. Alluding to Father Wang docking my allowance. 2. My father's love is like a heavy mountain and a luxuriant tree, sheltering me from wind and rain. As for me, I am like a bird in the tree, although sometimes his branches carelessly scrape off my feathers. Alluding to Father Wang docking my allowance. 3. My dearest Dad, we can't be apart for even a moment. Our family is like the 3 auspicious treasures. Although sometimes his love is too binding for me, like the old Lord's immortal binding rope, which puts pressure on me. Alluding to Father Wang docking my allowance. After reading this essay, Teacher Pan's eyes instantly turned red. She almost choked with sobs as she said to Wang Ling, Student Wang Ling, I already know, don't worry. It's getting late, let's go home. Wang Ling didn't know whether Teacher Pan had correctly obtained the information he had provided, but he believed that there shouldn't be any problems. He had already written so emotionally, but he was just secretly ridiculing Father Wang for docking his allowance. But the truth was that not long after Wang Ling returned home, Teacher Pan had taken a photo of his thoughts and sent it to the number 60 High Teachers group chat. No. 60 High Teachers Management Group, Talismans, Teacher Pan. Picture. This was written by Wang Ling from our class. Everyone take a look. P. Teacher Yi. Teacher Pan suspects that student Wang Ling has been subjected to domestic violence? Talismans, Teacher Pan. That's right, so I had him fill out a questionnaire. But from the questionnaire, it doesn't seem that student Wang Ling has been subjected to domestic violence, and even left such a touching essay. I cried when I read it. This child has a grateful heart, and knows that it isn't easy for his parents. Unfortunately, this is a private investigation, so I have to help Wang Ling keep this essay a secret. Otherwise, I think it could be displayed publicly. P. Teacher Yi. I finished reading it, it's really well written. History Teacher Wang. Not bad, not bad. This level of awareness and thinking is indeed a good child. I taught Wang Ling, and he's always been very well behaved in class. No wonder classmate Lotus Sun likes him. School Doctor, Xiang Yun. My opinion is different from everyone's. I think student Wang's essay is a hint. All the teachers. School Doctor, Xiang Yun. Look, he compares his parents to candles, his father to tree branches, and finally mentions the immortal binding rope. Teacher Yi quickly reacted. You mean wax dripping, whip and bondage? School doctor Xiang Yun. Facepalm, I never said that. I was just joking. At that moment, Teacher Pan, who was staring at the screen, looked nervous again. A hint? Teacher Pan felt that it wasn't impossible. Chapter 1098. Wang Ling would never have thought that his little essay, in which he secretly accused Father Wang of docking his allowance, would actually be shared publicly in a teacher's group, and that it would be forcibly interpreted. In most cases, a lot of people felt helpless when it came to this kind of forced interpretation. But teachers were magical creatures. Language teachers in particular could often extract information from an author's essays that even the original author himself didn't know. For example, a certain sentence and a certain sentence repeatedly mentioned a certain adjective, expressing the author's feelings. Maybe it was just that the author didn't have enough ink in his head, which was why he used the same adjective repeatedly. Another example was an exclamation mark at the end of a certain sentence, expressing the author's feelings. The truth was that for an author, the ending symbol at the end of their writing depended purely on their mood. For example, when you read this sentence, you would notice that there was an exclamation mark at the end. But in order to come up with a topic, teachers would always try to figure out the original author's meaning. Unfortunately, Wang Ling had been misunderstood just like that. When Wang Ling got home in the evening, Father Wang left 35 yuan and 68 cents on the table, along with a note. The eel department has organized for the author to take his wife to watch the blockbuster movie My Motherland and Me. The money on the table is just enough for you to order a pretty good takeout. Your mom and I have already inspected the shop closest to our house. It's clean and hygienic, and the bento is very nutritious. A nutritious assorted bento costs 35 yuan and 68 cents. Please use this money to order takeout. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. Father Wang was as stingy as ever. But this was a normal operation, and Wang Ling was already used to it. In fact, there was clearly mobile payment, but it wasn't accurate to the Jiao unit when transferring money. So Father Wang simply put cash on the table in order to use up the family's cash. Under the leadership of the two boss Ma's, mobile payment in Huaxiu Nation had reached its peak. The convenience of mobile payment meant that practically everyone only needed to take their phone with them when they went out. During the new year, thieves who went out to work couldn't even steal wallets, and could only steal other people's phones. The problem was that most people nowadays never left their phones. The birth of mobile payment also had a huge impact on pickpockets and other professions. At the same time, many people had gotten used to using mobile payments, and cash had gradually left them behind. Before mobile payments had been so convenient, part of Father Wang's royalties had been sent in envelopes. Thus, over the years, Father Wang had accumulated a lot of cash at home. Father Wang had thought of depositing money in the bank before, but when he thought that it would be very troublesome if he still needed cash in the future, he would have to go to the bank to withdraw it again, so he simply left it all at home. Now this cash was mainly used for Wang Ling's monthly allowance, as well as for trivial household expenses, such as grocery shopping, express delivery fees and so on. In addition, Father Wang would sometimes find an excuse to dock Wang Ling's allowance, so he had never been able to use all the cash that had accumulated up until now. He put the money on the table into his pocket and went to his bedroom. Father Wang's study was right across from Wang Ling's bedroom. When he reached the door, Wang Ling noticed a piece of paper on the floor, which Father Wang had probably accidentally dropped when he left. This piece of paper was densely filled with all kinds of analytical data and diagrams. The header was, Prenatal Examination Analysis Report. Wang Ling examined the report carefully. Name, Wang Yolan. Age, 38. Fetal position. During the examination, the fetus was found to be constantly rolling around in the body, and there is a small probability that the umbilical cord will become entangled. A regular follow-up next month is recommended to rule out this risk. Physical condition. Physical condition is good. Pregnant women are in good health due to appropriate exercise, and are very suitable for childbirth. Furthermore, because of their experience with natural childbirth, the doctor recommended natural childbirth. Finally, at the end of the report, Wang Ling found that after Mother Wang's prenatal examination last night, the hospital had given her due date of delivery, December 30th. This December 30th wasn't the 30th of next year. And it was next month. This absolutely wasn't because the hospital had used some black technology to force the fetus to mature early in the mother's body, but purely because the nutrition in the cultivation world was too good. In the last few days, Mother Wang had taken a lot of health supplements to protect the fetus and nourish the fetus. Some of them had been bought by her, while others had been given to her by Audiobook and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. These tonics were all priceless elixirs on the market, but Mother Wang ate them all, which directly led to her expected delivery date being brought forward significantly. Plus, the little girl in her womb wasn't easy to deal with to begin with. Even if Mother Wang didn't use these supplements, her due date would still be greatly advanced. In fact, it was very common for the estimated delivery date to be advanced in the cultivation world under normal circumstances. The problem was that it would usually only be advanced by 3 to 5 months. Even the doctors in the hospital were shocked when they saw the forecast report. They were able to see 9 months' worth of time in one go. It was as if this fetus couldn't wait to come into the world. It was growing too fast. It was like the enemy jungler was still farming the first group of wild monsters, while the enemy jungler had already eaten all the wild monsters on the other side as well as their own, and was directly ahead in experience by a whole 9 levels. Looking at the report, Wang Ling was suddenly very curious about where he had been born. He read from the report that Mother Wang had experience in natural childbirth. That was to say, he had also been born naturally back then. But Wang Ling realized that his memory of it was a little fuzzy. He did remember things very early, but he only had a vague image of himself in his mother's womb. To be exact, he only remembered that he had taken his first breath of fresh air before he started to remember. Out of curiosity, Wang Ling couldn't help but want to see what he had looked like when he had been born. He went to the basement and started to rummage through the images Father Wang had taken with the image bead. Wang Ling remembered what Father Wang had said before. In order to commemorate that moment, he had prepared a long time in advance, and had completely recorded Mother Wang's delivery process in the operating room. Using the ability of his king's eye to search the entire basement, Wang Ling finally found the image bead which Father Wang had mentioned. The year and date were engraved on it. It was the year and day of Wang Ling's birth. Injecting spirit energy into the bead, Wang Ling quickly saw Mother Wang's sweaty face in the operating room, as well as Father Wang's snot and tears which gushed out like crazy at that time. Father Wang had really been too excited. Chapter 1099. More than once, Wang Ling had heard about his birth from Mother Wang. She had said that his birth wasn't much different from an ordinary child's, and that there wasn't much to say, but Wang Ling still didn't quite believe it. This time, Wang Ling watched the video he had recorded back then, and had a general understanding of his own birth. The image bead recorded Father and Mother Wang's slightly immature looks back then. Their faces were still very young, and there weren't many crow's feet left at the corners of Mother Wang's eyes. Whether it was a man or a woman, being in their 30s was actually an age when they were in the prime of their lives and could achieve great things. Wang Ling's heart instantly ached when he saw Mother Wang's sweaty forehead in the image bead. A long time ago, giving birth was like passing through the gates of hell. Now that science and technology had advanced, there were all kinds of methods to smoothly deliver a child. Some people couldn't bear the pain, and chose to perform a C-section. In Wang Ling's opinion, Mother Wang was simply a heroine among women. Throughout the delivery process, in addition to the cheers of the nurses on the side, there was also Mother Wang's forceful voice, which seemed to be unexpectedly harmonious. However, after this process lasted for a few minutes, a nurse suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my God! It's out, it's out!" Logically speaking, the nurses in the obstetrics and gynecology department had witnessed many births, so they shouldn't be so emotional. However, the scene in front of them made these nurses feel shocked. What happened? Nurse Wang was so tired that she was sweating, but she did feel a sense of relief in her lower body, as if she had been constipated for a long time, and the burden on her body was suddenly lifted. She saw the shocked expressions on the faces of the doctors and nurses around her, and became even more curious about the situation in front of her. What the hell is going on? Is it a man or a woman? It's a boy. A nurse calmed herself down and rubbed her eyes. But this child seems to have crawled out on his own. Yes, back then, although Wang Ling had only gained consciousness after taking his first breath of fresh air. The legend of a magical baby who had crawled out of the womb had indeed been left behind in the obstetrics and gynecology hospital back then. It was just that at that time, he didn't have a name yet. He actually crawled out of Mother Wang's belly by himself. Even Wang Ling himself was very surprised by this result. After all, his body could indeed reflect the scene of Wang Wan's birth a month later. Who knew how this troublemaking little girl would break out of her shell? After tossing the homework to the two gremlins, he started to look through his WeChat chat history. In fact, since old Pan had let him go, he hadn't stopped receiving messages. Some had come to warm him up, and some were more concerned about the outcome of the battle between him and Xia Ming. This matter was known by too many people, and it had spread far and wide. It would have a great impact on him for a period of time to come. It was obviously unrealistic to expect time to dilute everything. Moreover, because the video had already spread out, it was unrealistic to visit them one by one to erase their memories. In an online environment, the influence of a video was sometimes difficult to estimate. Not to mention a video, even a sentence could have a very important impact. For example, the NBA incident that happened recently. Because of the shocking words of a team manager, the entire NBA environment was in turmoil. Then did this MOLA do it on purpose? Wang Ling felt that this might be a deliberate move by the other party. Because looking at the entire situation, this team manager was the biggest beneficiary. Wouldn't a person with a super high salary, a better understanding of the culture and bottom line of each country, and an extremely high degree consider the consequences of his words in the future? Wang Ling felt that this person's craftiness lay in dragging an entire industry down with him for his own personal benefit, brazenly using freedom of speech as a shield, which was truly comical. It wasn't Wang Ling's place to comment on this. In any case, it was fine to just know that this person was shameless. Back then, the NBA had paid a huge price to open Huaxiu Nation's doors. Now, because of a retarded comment on a social media platform, the NBA had slammed the doors shut. Not only that, the NBA's president had even gone to the trouble of putting a few locks on the doors afterwards. It had to be known that no matter what was missing from the world, it would still go on. It wasn't like you couldn't live without the NBA. Watching volleyball and learning the spirit of the women's volleyball team. Watching table tennis and enjoying a hell level of fancy performance. Wouldn't that be even more carefree? Wang Ling didn't reply to anyone else's messages. Although he had added a lot of people on WeChat, a lot of them had been attracted by his reputation recently. Wang Ling felt that it would be too impolite to refuse them or give them the cold shoulder, so he might as well add them and leave them hanging. Some people would ask for a rebuff, and then delete him from their friend list. Wang Ling usually only replied to people he was familiar with on WeChat. For example, the current 4-person group consisting of Super Chen, Dopey Gua, Little Peanut, and himself. How are you going to deal with classmate Lotus Sun's matter? Super Chen asked with concern. For a while at the start of school, Super Chen had also been one of Lotus Sun's pursuers, but later, there had been too many people pursuing her, so he had chosen to give up. There were too many competitors, and Super Chen felt that his chances of winning were too low, so he hadn't done much. To Super Chen, working hard for something unseen and illusory was a very stupid thing to do. If he had the time and energy, he would rather spend it on training his muscles. After all, the lines of his muscles would only become clearer the more he trained. I haven't thought about it yet, Wang Ling replied. He knew that he would have to think of a way to deal with this matter sooner or later, and it was likely that there would be another fierce battle tomorrow. That classmate Xia Ming definitely wouldn't let him off. As for Lotus Sun, Wang Ling still didn't know what on earth this girl was thinking. Although she had confessed to him in reverse, Lotus Sun herself had become the most mysterious one. And until now, she had been hiding at home and refusing to meet him. Tomorrow was Friday, and how this matter would be handled in the end would in fact depend on how Lotus Sun wanted to handle it. And as the focus of this matter, Wang Ling could only go with the flow and take it one step at a time. Friday, November 7th. Huagua Water Curtain Group. A limousine appeared at the gate of number 60 high school. And an old man with a cane and hands full of gold and silver slowly got out of the car. Bodyguards stood in front of him and behind him. "Old man, this is the place," an attendant said to the old man. A lot of people were astonished when they saw the old man's identity. This was the current chairman of Huagua Water Curtain Group, Sunny Yuan. Chapter 1100. As the topic's heroine, student Lotus Sun still hadn't come to school today. What was unexpected was that instead of student Lotus Sun, her grandfather had actually come. This chairman of Huagua Water Curtain Group was a force to be reckoned with wherever he went. Old Man Sun had acted suddenly this time, and no one had anticipated it. Otherwise, the school gate would have been surrounded by reporters from various major media outlets before the old man had arrived. Old Man Sun hadn't come this time because he had nothing better to do, but because he had indeed come on official business. Number 60 High's renovation was about to start, and he had come to observe the school environment. Logically speaking, there was no need for a big shot at the board of directors to show up for the renovation of the school. It could just be handed over to the engineers under him. So the truth was that everyone in the school had a rough idea of the old man's true purpose. Seeing the old man's limousine stop at the school gate, Superchin couldn't help crying out just by opening the window. "Damn, Wang Ling, the chairman of Huagua Water Curtain Group is here." A father-in-law inspecting a son-in-law. Wang Ling almost spat out the chocolate milk in his mouth when he heard this. What did he mean by a father-in-law inspecting a son-in-law? It hadn't been decided yet, right? Besides, Wang Ling himself didn't have much of an opinion. He could only take it one step at a time. Looking out the window, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. The streets around number 60 High had already been cordoned off, and Huagua Water Curtain Group's bodyguards had them all surrounded. Of course, this cordoned off only targeted media reporters, and wouldn't affect ordinary people's normal travel. After learning that Sunny Yuan had arrived at the school gate, Headmaster Chun and Director Shi immediately went to the teachers' offices, and had some teachers who weren't too busy come to the school gate to greet him. "Mr. Sun, there's no need to honor us with your presence." At the school gate, Headmaster Chun took the initiative to shake Sunny Yuan's hand. Old Man Sun returned the handshake symbolically and took a photo with Headmaster Chun. Wang Ling saw this scene from a distance by the window, and reckoned that this photo would very likely appear in number 60 High's School History Museum one day in the future. Although number 60 High's election as a key city high school was still on the agenda, any school had to acknowledge its historical value. This was a 100-year-old school that was hundreds or even thousands of years old. The combined age of the dozen or so cultivation schools in Peiyuan District could barely compare to number 60 High. I've always been very concerned about the children's learning environment. Coming to number 60 High this time, I realized that it was much better than I had imagined. It was just that it looked a little old, but the moment I stepped through the school gate, I smelled a thick scent of books. "It's so nostalgic." Old Man Sun spoke of his feelings as his entourage recorded them in a small notebook. Every teacher who came out to welcome them was beaming with joy. As the chairman of the Huagua Water Curtain Group, Old Master Sunny Yuan had met many big shots. His ability to speak was naturally excellent, and it made people feel comfortable, like a spring breeze. Although Headmaster Chin couldn't compare to Old Man Sun, he knew that these were just polite words, so he didn't get carried away. Instead, he showed a gratified smile and made an inviting gesture. "Mr. Sun, please take a seat in my office." In the headmaster's office, Headmaster Chun poured a cup of tea for Old Man Sunday. This was the best tea he could offer. Old Man Sun took a whiff of the tea and frowned. Then he took a symbolic sip and put down the teacup. Then Old Man Sun said, "Given Rongrong's grades, we could have sent her to a better school back then. But it was Rongrong's own decision to study at number 60 High, so I didn't stop her." Headmaster Chin nodded. Student Lotus Sun's grades are indeed outstanding. In our number 60 High's history list, her grades are currently in the top 10. After all, she's my granddaughter. It's only natural for her to reach this standard. Old Man Sun was so happy that he couldn't hide the smile on his face at all. But the truth is that number 60 High and my Huagua Water Curtain Group also have a deep connection. Headmaster Chun. Old Man Sun. Back then, there was a river called Beifeng in number 60 High's location. Speaking up to this point, Headmaster Chen immediately understood. There is a river. It's a river from before number 60 High was built. But later, as the climate changed, the riverbed dried up. In the end, this piece of land changed hands several times. First, it was developed into a mausoleum, and then it was reopened to build a school. That's right, that's it. Old Man Sun said. Back then, my ancestor used the water of this Beifeng River to successfully refine the first pill. That's why I say that number 60 High is actually fated with us. Headmaster Chen was blank when he heard this. He had never thought that there would be such a secret story between number 60 High and Huagua Water Curtain Group. My ancestor's first pill was refined here. This place can be used as a mausoleum and a school, so there's no need to say more about the feng shui of this land. So after 100 years, I've come here again to help number 60 High with the new construction. So my ancestors' feelings for this land back then haven't been in vain, Old Man Sun said. After a few exchanges, the atmosphere gradually warmed up. Now that the topic had been opened, they could naturally talk about anything. The truth was that Old Man Sun had wanted to ask about Xia Ming and Wang Ling as soon as he entered the school gates. It was just that there had been too many people at the time, and he had been too embarrassed to ask. Now that they were sitting in the headmaster's office and the topic was open, Old Man Sun knew that the time had come to ask. Well, Headmaster Chen, what do you think about student Xia and student Wang? After laying the groundwork for a long time, Old Man Sun finally picked up the topic he wanted to ask. Headmaster Chen had already known that Old Man Sun was going to ask about this, and naturally had already prepared a script in his heart. Don't worry, Mr. Sun. Our school will definitely handle this matter impartially and teach student Xia and student Wang to focus their limited energy on their studies. It's normal for young people to be impulsive. Student Xia and student Sun are both forthright people, so it's inevitable. As for student Wang, he's actually a more introverted child. He's introverted? So he's from a single-parent family? Old Man Sun's interest was suddenly piqued when Wang Ling was mentioned. No, his parents are still alive. It could be that his family environment has influenced his character since he was young. But student Wang's grades are still very stable. Headmaster Chen wanted to say that Wang Ling was outstanding, but then remembered that Wang Ling's grades seemed to always be above average. Using the word outstanding was a little exaggerated. It was more appropriate to use stable to describe him. But as soon as he said it, Headmaster Chen regretted it a little. He felt that if it was just a matter of getting average grades for a period of time, that might be considered stable. But for a student who could always get average grades, it wasn't too much to describe him as outstanding. Chapter 1101. Headmaster Chen was an honest person, and he had always been modest and cautious. Now that he was facing Old Master Sun Yuan, he felt that he should show even more humility. In fact, Wang Ling was indeed an outstanding student in Headmaster Chen's heart, but he couldn't say it out loud. On the contrary, he would instead talk about Wang Ling's shortcomings and mistakes. So what were Wang Ling's shortcomings and mistakes? Headmaster Chen thought about it carefully for a while. Apart from being too introverted, which couldn't really be considered a shortcoming, he really couldn't find anything to criticize student Wang Ling about. In all the years that number 60 High School had been founded, Headmaster Chen felt that Wang Ling was the first student who had lived such a mediocre life. He had an average score in his exams, stood in the middle of the class queue, and it seemed that Wang Ling's ranking in all the team competitions seemed to be in the middle. According to Headmaster Chen, student Wang Ling is introverted. Does he have friends? Old Man Sun asked. Of course he does, Headmaster Chen replied. Actually, Headmaster Chen had paid attention to every student's social circle before this. He was more worried that there would be students who couldn't fit in and were isolated in the school environment. Isolated children were more likely to suffer from school violence. And school violence didn't necessarily involve physical violence. Cold violence was also a type of school violence. As headmaster, putting an end to school violence was an unshirkable responsibility. While it was important to teach and educate people, it was equally important to build their souls. He hoped that every student who graduated from number 60 high school would leave in their third year of high school with good memories, and not with a shadow in their hearts. Furthermore, they would come back decades later to beat up or report their teachers, saying things like a gentleman's revenge was a dish best served cold. If he has friends, that proves that student Wang Ling has his own special charisma. Old Man Sun laughed, his impression of Wang Ling becoming a little clearer. Headmaster Chen didn't know what to say, and could only smile obsequiously. Previously, our school used to have an admission test system made from the remnant soul of a demon king's primordial spirit. At the start of the first semester, the demon king unexpectedly escaped. Fortunately, our teacher reacted in time and fused the remnant soul with the skeleton of a dog, turning it into a green-furred Akita. Oh, there was such a thing? Old Man Sun was surprised. Yes, Mr. Sunday. This dog is now at classmate Wang Ling's house. Back then, many of his classmates had said that they couldn't keep a dog at home, but classmate Wang's house just so happened to have plenty of space. In addition, we also think that student Wang Ling is too introverted, so having him help us raise the dogs will also help student Wang Ling deepen his interactions with the other students. Headmaster Chen said. He had said so much, but his meaning was clear. Actually, he was correcting some of his thoughts about Old Man Sun. What he had meant to say was that Wang Ling's ability to make friends actually didn't have much to do with his charisma, but definitely had something to do with the school's educational policies and policies. But obviously, Old Man Sun didn't think so. After listening to the whole story, he couldn't help beaming. Classmate Wang Ling is so introverted, but not only did he make friends, even his dog is willing to live in his house. It really isn't easy. Headmaster Chen. Grandpa Sun. Also, this dog's soul is a demon king, right? Principal Chen. That's right, Old Man Sun asked. Since it's a demon king, did it become obedient after turning into a dog? Headmaster Chen. It was very obedient, and now that it's familiar with classmate Wang Ling, it listens to everything he says. When those Shadow Stream killers came to the school previously, classmate Loopy Toad even helped us kill one of them. That's it. Old Man Sun said. Since this dog is being raised at classmate Wang Ling's house, it's enough to prove that his family's education is actually very good. It leads people to do good. Even such a ferocious demon king can be reformed to become so obedient. Don't you think there's a reason for this, Headmaster Chen? After saying this, Headmaster Chen was suddenly speechless. Old Man Sun's analysis was meticulous and almost impeccable. Headmaster Chen didn't even have the time to continue. They had been discussing whether they should visit Wang Ling's house again to see if there had been any signs of domestic violence. But after hearing Old Man Sun's words, Headmaster Chen instantly felt that there really wasn't much of a need to do so. This was a family that could even reform a demon king. How could they use violence against classmate Wang Ling? There was nothing wrong with this logic at all. Furthermore, if there really had been any domestic violence, given Loopy Toad's intelligence, it would have already mentioned it to the students around it. How could there be no response until now? Apart from what you've said, is there anything else related to classmate Wang Ling? Old Man Sun's interest in Wang Ling was growing. Headmaster Chen wiped at his sweat. He didn't want to continue talking about Wang Ling, so he changed the subject. About classmate Xia Ming. Oh, that classmate Xia. I'm not interested. Isn't it just the Ancient Divine Clan? There are also Ancient Divine Clan employees in my group. They're useless. Old Man Sun stroked the cane in his hand, his expression calm and unperturbed. Many people envied the innate advantage of the Ancient Divine Clan's spirit root, but if your cultivation talent wasn't good and your realm stagnated for a long time, it wouldn't matter even if you had the Ancient Divine Clan's advantage. After graduation, you would still have to work for someone else. As the chairman of a large corporation, Old Man Sun had more or less seen a few big scenes, so he naturally wouldn't be moved by a mere child from the Ancient Divine Clan. Furthermore, number 60 high school hadn't been a key city high school when it had enrolled Xia Ming back then, and had only been a key district high school. It couldn't be considered a particularly high-ranking school. In Old Man Sun's opinion, a child from the Ancient Divine Clan who got into number 60 high school wasn't particularly outstanding. Let's talk about classmate Wang Ling, Headmaster Chen. Old Man Sun's eyes lit up at the mention of Wang Ling again. Headmaster Chen could only try to explain Wang Ling's various shortcomings. Classmate Wang Ling's grades have always been in the middle. I suspect his dead fish eyes are distracting him. Oh, you mean his single eyelid? At first, I didn't like it very much, and I even wondered if I should pay for classmate Wang Ling to have a double eyelid. Later, I heard from my assistant that our Rongrong liked this style. Now I'm used to it. This single eyelid looks lifeless, but it actually has a special kind of deterrent and gives people a sense of security. Old Man Sun analyzed. Headmaster Chen. Also, as far as I know, classmate Wang Ling also likes to eat snacks, for example, crispy noodle snacks. Crispy noodle snacks. Old Man Sun nodded. Crispy noodle snacks are good. Eating snacks shows that he has a child's heart, and crispy noodle snacks can collect cards. Classmate Wang Ling is definitely collecting them. This collecting ability just proves that classmate Wang Ling has a pretty good sense of financial management, and can collect money. For a moment, Headmaster Chen was speechless. All the good things had been said by this old man's son. Chapter 1102. He didn't know if it was because he and Wang Ling hit it off in his heart, or because his granddaughter Rongrong liked him, but as old man's son listened to Headmaster Chen, he frantically analyzed the situation in his heart. At the same time, the more he listened, the more satisfied he became with Wang Ling. Although it wasn't to the point of marriage, Sunny Yuan at least felt that Wang Ling was someone she could date. Of course, Sunny Yuan himself couldn't guarantee anything when it came to feelings. He felt that even if Wang Ling and Lotus Sun couldn't really get together in the end, it would probably be great if they could still be friends. In contrast, he really wasn't interested in Xiaoming at all. In fact, it could be said that he was rather disgusted by him. What right did this person have to interfere when his granddaughter had decided to date him? Furthermore, he had especially challenged Wang Ling to a one-on-one fight, and instead of succeeding, he had been injured all over. How could such a person protect his granddaughter? Old Man Sun held the cane in his hand, his mind full of thoughts. Although he wasn't satisfied with Xiaoming, he couldn't show it directly, so Sunny Yuan took a deep breath and asked, "Where's classmate Xiaoming?" "He's still in the hospital." "Is it serious?" "It's all right. Our group will pay for the medical expenses," Sunny Yuan said. "How can I do that?" "It doesn't matter. It's decided then." Old Man Sun was resolute, and Headmaster Chen was naturally helpless. The chairman's style of doing things had always been one to keep his word. Of course, apart from medical fees, Old Man Sun also had his own plans. After Headmaster Chen asked about Xiaoming's situation, Old Man Sun quickly made a call in his office to Huaguo Water Curtain Group's finance department. He didn't shy away from putting the phone on speaker in his office, and Headmaster Chen, who was on the side, could hear their conversation. "Is it little Zhang from the finance department?" "Yes, Chairman. I'm Zhang Jia. What can I do for you?" "Go to Peiyuan District City Hospital's trauma department right away, and look for a patient called Xiaoming, room 207. "Yes, Chairman. What do I want?" "Bring the legal staff and talk to him. Ask him how much money he wants to leave my granddaughter." Hearing this, Headmaster Chen took a deep breath. Wasn't this a cliché scene that would appear in all novels? It could be said that this wave of dialogue came quite unexpectedly, and Headmaster Chen was directly stunned. However, their conversation did not end there. "Chairman, let me be a little nosy. Is this classmate Xiaoming the one from yesterday's live stream? You also know?" I only heard about it," Sunny Yuan frowned. The impact of this matter was indeed very bad. Logically speaking, the people in the finance department should be too busy to pay attention to this kind of thing. In the absence of other work assignments, they had to work overtime to complete the accounting. Even the people in the finance department knew about it, which made Old Master Sun a little unhappy. The impact of this matter was indeed beyond his imagination, mainly because it was not good for his granddaughter's reputation. After yesterday's live broadcast, he had already spent a large amount of money to smooth over the media, so that the media would disappear without a trace and not report too much about it. But now that he had cleared the channels with the mainstream media, It might not be so easy to stop those online marketing accounts that were trying to leech traffic. Where did the person who told you the news get it from? It was in the company's internal chat group. The impact of this matter actually isn't as big as you think, Chairman. Also, I took a look on Weibo before, and those videos have all been deleted and cleaned up, the finance department employee said. Cleaned up? Who did it? Wang Ming did it. Old Master Sun was blank. He definitely didn't have the ability to do it himself. And he hadn't spent money to hire someone to do it. Forget it. It was a good thing that it hadn't spread through the online channels. Before you go to the hospital later, go through the chat group and see who is so nosy. Tell them to come to the finance department to settle the bill and get the hell out. Yes, Chairman. Little Zhang shivered on the other end of the phone. Then about classmate Xiaoming's compensation. Do as you see fit. Don't report it to me if it's less than 10 million, Old Master Sun said. Yes, I'll do it right away. The call was over. In fact, Sunny Yuan even felt that Xiaoming wasn't worth 10 million at all. But in order to ensure the success of the matter, an appropriate amount of money was necessary. Putting down the phone, Old Master Sun stared at Headmaster Chen and smiled. I've embarrassed myself in front of you, Headmaster. You're too kind. Headmaster Chen was also shivering like the finance department staff on the other end. I want to ask Mr. Sun, is this how you deal with every person who confesses to classmate Lotus Sun? Giving money is the most direct way. Of course, it's mainly because this matter has blown up too much. I'm afraid that this classmate Xia won't accept it, and will have other thoughts about Rongrong. Most people know when to back off and don't dare harbor any unrealistic thoughts. There's no need to give money to those kinds of people, Sunny Yuan said. Money was like a fleeting cloud to him. It wasn't a big deal at all. I heard that the body technique exchange meet in Peiyuan district is about to start? Classmate Wang Ling, will he be participating? Old Master Sun asked at that moment, changing the subject. The list of names hasn't been officially decided yet, Headmaster Chen replied. He wasn't trying to shirk responsibility, but that it really hadn't been decided yet. Headmaster Chen was still conflicted about the 10-member delegation, because the truth was that there were only 5 participants, and the remaining 5 were substitutes. As the main force, the transfer students who had just enrolled this semester were very strong. But they had just enrolled, after all. And Headmaster Chen felt that it wasn't particularly good to directly send them out as the main force, so the list of the main force hadn't been decided yet. Previously, he hadn't stopped the duel between Xiaoming and Wang Ling because he wanted to figure out which one of them would be better to send as the main force. In the end, after Old Master Sun spoke this time, Headmaster Chen immediately knew what to do. He continued, but although the list hasn't been confirmed yet, classmate Wang Ling has already been confirmed as the main force. He could be considered to have defeated classmate Xiaoming in yesterday's duel. Regardless of whether it's luck or strength, it's an undeniable fact. A wise decision. Hearing Headmaster Chen's words, Sunny Yuan was immediately happy. He got up and shook hands with Headmaster Chen. Number 60 High is truly fortunate to have such a wise headmaster like you. As an old man, it was clear that Old Master Sun didn't know that the word wise had already been distorted in modern culture. Headmaster Chen was quite familiar with young people's culture, and when he heard this word for the first time, he thought it was an insult. Chapter 1103. That afternoon, at the friendly suggestion of Sunny Yuan, Old Man Sun, Headmaster Chen swiftly compiled a list of names and put it up on number 60 High's school bulletin board. There were 5 people on the starting list: Fang Xing, Jiang Bai, Lotus Sun, Super Chen, and Wang Ling. 5 substitutes: Gu Xuanji, Lu Qingyi, Zhen Yuan, Hero Guo, Li Yue, and Xiaoming. Wang Ling knew most of these people, and they were practically all on his side. The only one he wasn't familiar with was Li Yue, who was in the same class as Fang Xing. She was the class monitor of Elite Class 2, and her grades were pretty good. As for Xiaoming, Wang Ling could be considered to have gotten to know him through a fight. If it had been before the duel, a lot of people might have questioned this list. Xiaoming's grades were so outstanding, so why should he be Wang Ling's substitute? But after the duel last night, no one said anything. Even if there were some who wanted to stand up for Xia Ming, they could only swallow their words. Their skills were inferior. Who could they blame? In short, there was no way this matter would end well. In the afternoon, Xia Ming saw the message in the class group chat at the hospital, and he was so angry that his bones, which had just gotten better, almost broke. His starting position had been snatched away, and Xia Ming's heart was gradually filled with dark emotions. Wang Ling, I'll remember you. Being forced to be a starter wasn't good news for Wang Ling, because it went against the Wang family's motto of keeping a low profile. Wang Ling had thought that after nearly half a year of torment, life in grade 1 might become a little more comfortable. He had never expected that not long after school started, all kinds of major events would happen one after another, attracting countless people's attention. Life was unpredictable. Fortunately, Father Wang had been concerned about the issue of his second child recently, and didn't have much free time to pay attention to Wang Ling. Otherwise he would have to find an excuse to dock Wang Ling's pocket money again. In the evening, Wang Ming's remote projection appeared in Wang Ling's room once again. This was a method of using the Heavenly E satellite to project spirit power into a magic treasure, and turning a virtual image of a part of the body into a physical one. Wang Ming had already mastered it very well. Previously, he had only been able to turn his hands into a physical projection, but now he could turn most of his body into a physical one, just like when the real person came to Wang Ling's room. I've already blocked all the news that could be blocked, so do you want to thank me? After learning about the duel between Wang Ling and Xia Ming, Wang Ming immediately reacted by using his own technology to block a lot of videos and comments online. As long as a keyword was involved, it would be rejected with the excuse of the internet is not smooth. Many people were just interested in some events for fun. After failing repeatedly, they would naturally give up. As it turned out, Wang Ming's guess was absolutely correct. Wang Ming had already applied for a patent on this technique, and felt that it could be used to solve some network management problems. Although the internet had implemented a real name system, there were always people who liked to find a sense of existence on the internet to vent their emotions. They thought that others couldn't see them through the screen, so they started to make up random comments and talk nonsense. A lot of online violence happens like this. Perhaps some people thought that scolding was nothing, but if tens of thousands of people thought the same, then it would be enough to form an army, and it would cause great damage to the hearts of many people. At birth, man is good by nature, but sometimes it must be said that it is difficult to guess man's evil intentions. Someone once said, when an avalanche comes, not a single snowflake is innocent. The hearts of people who had been subjected to all kinds of online violence for many years were already extremely fragile. As time went by, the violent words sent in the next second might be the straw that broke the camel's back. This also explained why some celebrities suffered from depression. They were clearly very young, but gave up on themselves when they were in the prime of their lives and had a grand future ahead of them. After experiencing cyber violence for a long time, the color of the world they saw gradually changed from colorful colors to grayish-black. In the end, this grayish-black became their final portrait in the world. Of course, Wang Ling didn't think that his heart was that fragile. Although he was still young, Father and Mother Wang had raised him to be a Buddhist, and he had long since seen through the world of mortals. He didn't care what other people scolded him or what they thought of him, but he also didn't want his affairs to be discussed in public. After all, he was just an ordinary kid who was still in school, not a public figure. It was a little unfair for him to be exposed to the public like this. So it had to be said that Wang Ming's handling of the matter had been very timely. Wang Ling watched as Wang Ming lay down on his bed very naturally, and even took off his socks as he stretched like a cat in a comfortable nest. Wang Ling was silent for a moment, but didn't say anything. Today he would make an exception. Dealing with online public opinion was as easy as lifting a finger for Wang Ming. Wang Ling knew that Wang Ming hadn't specifically asked him to look for him just to take credit. Looks like there's a result for Bai Yu Quan, Wang Ling said telepathically as he stared at Wang Ming. Sure enough, you guessed it. Wang Ming smiled. You told me before that this guy has faded Dao and holds the memories of all kinds of worlds, so when we searched him, we found that his memories were particularly chaotic. Thus, Audiobook entrusted our research institute with a thorough screening of this guy's memories. To be honest, this result was a little unexpected. Wang Ling. We found another you in his memories, Wang Ming said solemnly as he sat up cross-legged. Back then, Wang Ming had already had a premonition. He still remembered the white-haired Wang Ling he had seen in his dream, who looked exactly like Wang Ling. Even his dead fish eyes were deeply etched into wood. That was the person who had resurrected Devil Gut Fungus Lord, and the current president of the Foreign Underworld Force Night Chief, Bai Zhe. Devil Gut Fungus Lord's whereabouts were currently unknown, but President Bai had made a series of moves after his resurrection. For example, Bai Yuquan was a character President Bai had pushed out after his resurrection. Although Bai Yuquan was President Bai's son in name, in Wang Ming's view, rather than a son, it was better to call him a pawn. Because from beginning to end, neither President Bai nor Devil Gut Fungus Lord had shown up. Although President Bai had already made a move, the truth was that Bai Yuquan had been the one to do all the public appearances. After their resurrection, it was as if these two people whom Wang Ling had personally dealt with before had become completely different people. They had changed their usual aggressiveness and were operating behind the scenes. And now, it could be said that the source had been found. The source was 100% that white-haired Wang Ling. But while this white-haired person looked like Wang Ling, Wang Ming had yet to thoroughly investigate their relationship. Chapter 1104. Wang Ming had no way of knowing who this white hair was, and how he was related to Wang Ling, since he didn't have enough clues. But the truth was that Wang Ling already had a rough idea of what it was, but that was just his own speculation. Fate Dao was a special kind of great Dao, which he had learned from Bai Yuquan. Although it was very complicated, it wasn't as difficult as Wang Ling had imagined when it came to actually learning it. After mastering Fate Dao, Wang Ling had a completely new understanding of the three timelines, the past, the present and the future, as well as the world lines. He could mobilize power from any world line. But the Fate Dao that Wang Ling mastered was in fact different from other people's. His world lines were all under his control, and the stories that happened in the other world lines could only be considered his clones. No matter what kind of personality the clones in the other world had or what happened to them, they couldn't possibly rebel against the original Wang Ling. This was the ability that Wang Ling had after mastering the ultimate meaning of Fate Dao. And Bai Yuquan had only scratched the surface. So Wang Ling had thought of a hypothesis about white hair's identity. Assuming that this white hair was a clone that had left his original world before he had mastered Fate Dao, everything actually made sense. But Wang Ling felt that this white hair wasn't as powerful as he had imagined. If he was really so powerful, why didn't he directly destroy the world? After coming to this world, he resurrected his mortal enemy and organized the Black Shadow Army. What was the point of doing all these fancy things? It was nothing more than an unknown grand plan hidden behind all this. Even though these were just Wang Ling's speculations at this stage, given that Wang Ming had provided him with a small number of clues to support them, there was a high possibility that they were right. The more Wang Ling thought about it, the more reasonable this explanation seemed. Because so far, he hadn't found any trace of white hair. There was nothing on this earth that Wang Ling couldn't find. But if this person had come from another Earth in another world line, it actually made sense that he couldn't find him. After all, every world line had a different story happening at every moment, and the laws and times of the world itself were also completely different. Their current world used spirit chi, so other worlds might also use battle chi, horse chi, immortal chi and so on as a natural energy source in place of spirit chi. Wang Ling couldn't sleep that night. Xia Ming, who was lying in the hospital, couldn't sleep either. This was the standard temperament of a young man. Xia Ming had always been unconvinced by the outcome of his duel with Wang Ling, and felt that Wang Ling had defeated him purely by luck. But he really couldn't figure out what kind of body movement Wang Ling was using. Why was it that every punch he threw actually turned around and landed on his own body? Why was it that he was always the one who got hurt in the fight? He kept saying that he wouldn't let Wang Ling off, but in fact he wasn't thinking of anything too malicious. He just wanted to find a suitable opportunity to fight Wang Ling again. Fair and just. Sparring in private. Not for Lotus Sun. It was all for the sake of fighting for a bit of pride. After lying in the hospital for a while, Xiaoming felt that he had calmed down a little. In the afternoon, Treasurer Zhang of Huagua Water Curtain Group came to look for him as a representative. Asking him to name a price to leave Lotus Sunday, Xiaoming thought that Huagua Water Curtain Group might have misunderstood him, and he refused the treasurer's request on the spot. However, he also agreed that he wouldn't harass Lotus Sun in public again, and that everything from now on would be based on the principle of fair competition. While in the hospital, Xiaoming thought about it for a long time. The biggest reason why Lotus Sun looked down on him was probably because he wasn't outstanding enough. If he was outstanding enough, perhaps everything would become smoother. At that moment, Xiaoming tossed and turned on the hospital bed. He only had one thought in his mind, and that was to get better from his injuries as soon as possible, so that he could resume his normal school life as soon as possible. Then he would study hard, study Wang Ling's fighting style, and give him a good beating. But it was already 2 in the morning, and Xiaoming still didn't feel the slightest bit tired. He stared at the ceiling, deep in thought. At that moment, the door to the ward suddenly opened. Xiaoming thought that it was a nurse making rounds, so he closed his eyes slightly and ignored her. A very untimely male voice rang out. It was very low but magnetic. "Xiaoming, descendant of the ancient divine clan, how are you?" It clearly wasn't the female nurse's voice. Xiaoming thought it was someone else who had come to visit him, and his tone was clearly impatient. He turned his body halfway to the side, one hand already on the call bell, and he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the visitor. "Big brother, it's already midnight. Why don't you look at the time? Who would come to visit a patient in the middle of the night? This person was either a lunatic or a psychopath. I advise you to keep your little tricks to yourself, classmate Xiaoming. Otherwise, I can't guarantee the safety of the little nurse who comes here." When that voice rang out, Xiaoming saw a dark shadow as thin as a gossamer grip his hand. In a split second, he actually couldn't move. He felt pressure on his body, as if he was being bound by an indescribable force. It was like being held down by a ghost. He couldn't move, but his consciousness was extremely clear. He could sense that the shadow was talking to him. "Who on earth are you?" At that moment, Xiaoming already realized that the other party hadn't come with good intentions. It definitely wasn't here to visit him, but was clearly looking for him. "I'm Nightmare." The shadow smiled. "I'm everyone's nightmare." "What do you mean?" Xiaoming was puzzled. "You don't need to know what it means, but I can tell you that I'm here to help you fulfill your wish." The mysterious shadow's voice came again. "Do you know what your greatest failure was in the duel?" "Power." Xiaoming replied. "That's right, you're indeed too weak." The shadow smiled. "So, I can help you become stronger, classmate Xiaoming." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Xiaoming asked. "The ancient divine clan has a unique physique, and your physique is actually one of a kind in the ancient divine clan. With your constitution, you can absorb the power of an entire underground heavenly vein. As long as you can absorb the power of that heavenly vein, defeating that classmate Wang will be a piece of cake. So, do you want to become stronger? Let's do a sex trade." Chapter 1105. What do you want me to do? At that moment, Xiaoming couldn't move at all. He was a little frightened. This mystical power was pressing down on him, tormenting his mind to the limit. It was a very torturous feeling, and it was as if this person's name was Nightmare. He was in a nightmare. It was very common for people to struggle in a nightmare, and Xiaoming's mood was even more so at that moment. He just wanted to escape this nightmare as soon as possible. After lying in the hospital for a day, it had taken him a lot of effort to calm down, but the appearance of this man called Nightmare threw his train of thought into disarray once again. The National High School Body Technique Exchange Conference is coming up, and the venue this time is the prestigious Nine Dragon Mountain. Student Xia, you only have one task, and that is to find an opportunity to climb to the top of Nine Dragon Mountain. After you reach the top, I'll give you other directions, said Nightmare. National? Isn't it held in our district? Xiaoming was astonished. Plans can't keep up with changes. Student Xia, you'll know the specifics tomorrow. I hope you won't stand me up. Of course, in order to prove that I have the ability to make you stronger, I'll give you a small gift first. After the man called Nightmare said that, Xiaoming instantly felt the pressure on his body loosen. After the man called King of Nightmares said that, Xiaoming felt the pressure that had been binding him instantly loosen. It was like the pleasure of suddenly being released after being imprisoned for a long time, and the comfortable feeling of having to pee for a long time before being released. Very quickly Xiaoming woke up. At that moment, he was astonished to find that his body actually didn't hurt at all. The man called Nightmare had completed his task. He didn't have a true form, and was just a black shadow that came and went without a trace at an extremely fast speed. In Songhai City, Nightmare appeared in a completely abandoned factory. Through an iron door he replied to the person inside. The initial work has been completed. Well done. As expected of the Dark Network's first leader 300 years ago, the person inside the door said. Without the ancient divine clan as the key, the main veins valve will never open. I already don't have the patience to keep waiting. I can only give it my all. It's all thanks to Sir, Nightmare replied respectfully. He had been resurrected by this white-haired Sir inside the door. Although he didn't know what kind of methods this lord had used, he was completely convinced by the people in the sect. 300 years ago, he was the #1 ranker in the Dark Network. If it wasn't for his death, the ultimate killer king who had been captured wouldn't have become the #1 ranker. But now, Nightmare Lord did not expect that he would actually come back to life after sleeping for so long. It was like a dream. Now you have one last mission, Whitehair said. Please speak, my lord. I want you to sneak into the residence of reincarnation and retrieve that person's broken bones. Residence of reincarnation. Broken bones, the king of nightmares was stunned. The residence of reincarnation was a place that Nightmare was very familiar with. The so-called residence of reincarnation was also known as the prison of reincarnation. It was the largest underground prison in all of Huaxiao Nation, suppressing all kinds of evil spirits and vicious criminals that could not be completely eliminated. Speaking of the broken bones in the residence of reincarnation, the first person Nightmare thought of was the legendary figure who had founded the Dark Net, Xie Sanxiao. People called him Dark Ancestor. My lord, are you going to? That's right, I want to resurrect him. However, it is inconvenient for me to take action directly, so I let you go. This person is the key to the next part of the plan. The person inside the door wasn't the slightest bit worried that Nightmare would divulge the plan, and instead told Nightmare everything about the next part of the plan. Xie Sanxiao's real name is actually Xia. A long time ago, he was called Xia Sanxiao. Xia Sanxiao. Nightmare instantly caught a hint of information from the specific surname. Could it be? People called Dark Ancestor Xie Sanxiao was in fact the founder of the ancient divine clan. Unfortunately, Xie Sanxiao died too early. When it came to Dark Ancestor Xie Sanxiao, Nightmare remembered it vividly. Back then, when this Dark Ancestor had fallen into the net of the law and been punished, the entire Dark Net had been shaken. No one had believed that this legendary founder of the Dark Net would actually die. Furthermore, he had died at the hands of someone called Sua Butong. Back then, in order to capture Xie Sanxiao, the International Alliance of Cultivators had gathered cultivators from all over the world and issued the first Alliance-level Heavenly Dao Bounty Order. Under the command of the Alliance, 500,000 cultivators from all over the world had acted in unison to besiege Xie Sanxiao. But in the end, when everyone found Xie Sanxiao, a 4-man team of cultivators sent by Huaxiao Nation had taken his head, and the team leader at that time had been Zhuo Butong. After this happened, the entire world was shaken. After that operation, Huaxiao Nation gained a huge international reputation. In the end, Dark Ancestor Xie Sanxiao had also been thoroughly incinerated. His body had long since turned to ash, and the only thing that remained was a small piece of his skull that had been broken in half. This was the hardest part of the body, and Huaxiao Alliance had cremated it several times back then without success. In the end, it became a souvenir for the Huaxiao team when they killed Dark Ancestor Xie Sanxiao, and was kept in the residence of reincarnation. Back then, Xie Sanxiao wasn't killed by Zhuobutong's team, but died after he failed to absorb his main meridian. When Zhuobutong found him, he just picked up a loophole. Inside the door, Whitehair laughed. Picked up a loophole. So that's how it is. This wasn't a secret among the higher-ups back then. Furthermore, it was people from the International Cultivation Alliance who suggested it. They went to great lengths to issue the first Alliance-level Heavenly Dao Bounty Order, in order to hunt down the Darknet's #1 wanted criminal. They mobilized hundreds of thousands of cultivators from all over the world, but in the end Xie Sanxiao died because of his own fault. What do you think public opinion will think about this matter if it gets out? Nightmare was silent. He had never thought that there would actually be such a story behind what happened back then. Back then, Xie Sanxiao self-destructed because he couldn't absorb the power of his main meridian. Zhuobutong's team happened to be nearby, and picked up the pieces in passing. Furthermore, this descendant of Zhuobutong was also one of the organizers of the National High School Body Technique Exchange Conference this time. Who was it? Xie Sanxiao's real name was Xia Sanxiao, and Zhuobutong's real name naturally wasn't Zhuobutong. Although Zhuobutong became famous in one battle back then, and won the International Cultivation Alliance's first-class medal for meritorious service, he didn't want to soar too quickly to avoid making people jealous. He hurriedly applied to change his name, so that the people who knew about this back then would bury this secret in their hearts. Even now, Zhuobutong's descendants don't know that their ancestor actually had such meritorious service back then. The person inside the door who knew everything laughed softly at that moment. Thus he changed his name from Zhuo to Zhuo. His descendants now all have the surname Zhuo. Currently, the most famous descendant is Zhuo. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.